computer likes me today. All right, the computer likes us. Likes me. Maybe it hates me. Anyway, it seems to be working. Welcome back. We're kind of mostly here. Whoops. Wake up my equipment here.
Wait a second. The colors of that in the bag of candy. That's so weird. I thought I remember
So,
Boss. Boss.
I very much approve of anarchy, so I'm loath to actually disrupt the disruption. Interrupt the interruption.
We hang out with you for any length of time, Peter, and for me, at least, it's going to ruin me for anything with this.
Oh, good.
It's all over.
You'll still be able to pretend that.
I do at work.
Yeah, exactly. See? When someone's paying, when it's worthwhile, you'll be able to muster it.
What?
A good pretense, a useful pretense. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm paying attention. I'm serious. Yeah, right. So anyway, we're kind of on the home stretch of our weekend together. Yesterday, we kind of, or at least I presented my case and bulldozed you with it to whatever extent I could. This morning, we've been playing with some of the ramifications. And this afternoon, we have an open field. Basically, we're here for you. This is for you to explore this stuff and incorporate this stuff and poke at this stuff to whatever extent you like in order to make it useful or interesting or fun for you. So, you know, the ball's kind of in your court. The real question is, so what's going on? You know, what is, so, you know, we've been playing with all this stuff all day yesterday and this morning. And here we are. And so what's up with that for you? You know, is it bullshit? Is it sound great? Is it really interesting? Are you like in the thick of it? Are you like, yeah, that's cool, but what about X, Y, Z and all this kind of stuff? So the important thing is not what I think. The important thing is not, you know, some outlining some beautiful metaphysical, theoretical presentation of the way it really is. The important thing is, well, what's up with you? What's your reality? Where are you at? And what's this to you? What's your take on it? Where are you with it? You know, where are you sitting with this stuff? And you know, are you coming up against any portion of it? Or you're just totally on board and yeah, I totally get it. That's great. Now I'm enlightened. You know, show me where I can get paid. Show me where someone will give me money for that.
And it's like
and while you're at it, someone show me where someone will give me money for that. You know, or what, you know, so. Yes. Yes.
I've often heard it said, seek and you'll find, you know,
Sure.
kind of through the Christian lineage.
Sure.
But so are you saying just by the very nature of investigating that more would be revealed, so to speak?
Yes, with a caveat. And the caveat, what I would add to seek and you will find, is seek intelligently and you will find. It's very easy to be seeking and to not really be seeking. And so what makes it effective, what makes it actual seeking, is to do it with intelligence. And yeah, absolutely. Anywhere you look, you will discover that what's going on here completely transcends what you're used to thinking it is. Because it does, and it obviously does. And so if you look at that with open, you know, with unbiased intelligence, you'll discover that. So this demonstrates directly what it is and conveys directly what it is to an unbiased intelligent perception. So all you really need to supply is the unbiased intelligent perception. And then what it is does all the work.
Yeah, unbiased is the part.
Well, there's the rub, as you say, because again, we've all We all have a history of essentially being brainwashed or what have you. But nonetheless, what you are is beyond any brainwashing or conditioning that you've been immersed in. You're intrinsically, whatever, even if you are that, you're also more than that. Everyone is. Because it's what you are. You can't not be that. It's just the reality of it, the actuality of it. So everyone, you in your particular case, but everyone has resources to bring to bear to their investigation beyond what they're aware of. And so the unbiased is less about being unbiased than about kind of priming the pump for letting these hidden resources, giving them room to emerge and surprise you. You know, you are made of pure, transcendental, inconceivable, infinite intelligence, literally. Your intelligence is so far beyond the human scale. It's just what you are. It's what you're made of. It can't not be that. And typically, we aren't aware of exercising that because typically we're immersed in this consensus reality human mindset where we're just, I'm just Peter Brown trying to hustle my way through my pathetic life as best I can, so on and so forth. But in actuality, on the sort of the bedrock level, there's this inconceivable intelligence that's actually engaged with and dancing with all this stuff. And so a big part of this is to notice that fact, to give it room to go, wow, there's something, I'm smarter than I'm aware of being. I have more resources than I'm aware of being. This perception that's going on here is an inconceivably intelligent engagement. Like right at any given moment, the intelligence in an instant, you perceive every single bit of information that's present in your sensory field and in your mental fields and all of your experiential field, instantaneously, bang, like that, like a snapshot. How is that possible? I mean, that's an exercise of just inconceivable intelligence and functionality. And it's just hardwired. You just do it. It's not like something you have to, let me see what I'm seeing. You don't have to do that, right? You just automatically, bang, you have it all. And so there's enormous sort of hardwired processing power in what you are. And the trick is to settle into that and let yourself work from that. I mean, you always let yourself work from that is absurd because you're always working from that, but let yourself notice you're working from that. Because typically we're identified with our personality and, oh, I'm doing this and I have to figure this out, blah, 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 blah. All of which is an absurd, pathetic caricature of the power of this astounding. It's as if you were some ultra super mega computer that was running a simulation of an antique, 1K computer from back in the 60s or something. It's laughable how much the persona and the persona's acknowledgement of its own functionality steps down what's actually here.
Yeah, because I've often wondered, so there's the supposed intellectual understanding. It could be, going back to your television allegory, it's like, okay, if you want to call it consciousness or whatever you want to call it, it's totally involved in the story.
Yeah.
It seems like there's absolutely no control of it getting that which is looking to be interested in something other than just that all engaging content. And it seems to me, unless there's been some kind of personal calamity to get it to kind of go, oh.
But it's trickier than that.
Yeah.
It's more subtle than that. Because even as your persona is doing that and is sucked into all this stuff, there's other portions of you which are totally beyond it and which are totally transcendent, which aren't engaged in it. Okay. Which ordinarily, I mean, in sort of pop psychological terms, we call it the unconscious mind. The conscious mind is who I'm aware of, my psychological self, Peter Brown, who's a fairly clever guy with moderate functionality and pretty neurotic and blah, blah, blah. And that's sort of a bubble of apparent functionality and persona that's floating in my experience. But then outside of that bubble is this amazing, inconceivable, sort of impersonal intelligence that is engaged with things and doing things simultaneously. So it's kind of like almost a schizophrenia or some kind of a double double personality or double reality, where a portion of our reality is being this plodding human being persona that's stuck in its stupidity, which is kind of running like a virtual simulation in the context of this amazing, inconceivable functionality, which is also happening at the same time, which is not recognized by the other because it's just not identified with. And so a big part of this is to sort of notice this sort of all this other stuff going on in the background. And it's not a matter of either or. It's not a matter of turning off your human persona and your human distraction and somehow turning on this other thing. It's more a matter of noticing that even as that's happening, even as that's present to whatever degree it is, there's a lot more going on, and there's something really interesting there. And most powerfully, you're already there. It's not a you that you're used to thinking of as you, but in fact, it is you. So you kind of take advantage of your own unconscious multitasking. It's like you see a beautiful sunset, and your personality can look at it and go, "Wow, that's really pretty. That's a lovely shade of red." Right? But simultaneously, your perceptual and inherent intelligence is just bang! It's assimilating all this astounding rainbow of information and beauty and structure and shape and juxtaposition, and it's just being with that and like every which way from Sunday, at the same time as you're sitting there going, "Oh, it's a nice sunset," and so you can sort of get a sense of that. You sort of get a sense of, wow, there's something going on behind the scenes. It's non-verbal and it's not logical, but it's something, and it's interestingly sharp and interestingly sort of bright and sparkly. And you just develop a kind of a sense of that.
Because I mean, more and more I'm aware of, like that kind of schism that you just talked about, because that whatever the little dialogue is telling me, oh, that's beautiful, that's something, whatever. I mean, I can just see clearly if I'm not emotionally involved in it.
Yeah. It can become more and less obvious, but the trick is that it's always actually there. And so it's a kind of a sensitivity training to let yourself notice that it's there. And we typically notice it when we're distracted most often, which is kind of the opposite of what you might expect. So rather than trying or being purposeful or functioning, that's why trying to meditate and things like that can frequently be very counterproductive. It's actually when you're sort of slipping through the cracks or distracted or spaced out that it can be the greatest opportunity for sort of getting random access to these other nonlinear irrational modes, which is where your most powerful intelligence and most powerful assets of your nature are. And as you develop more and more of a sense that that's there, you begin to get a sense of what it is and the way in which it's there. And so you start sort of inhabiting that, just sort of in the back of your mind, just sort of intuitively, even as you're still you muddling through your stuff. And so you sort of open up into your alter ego, in a way, is a good way to put it, maybe. But it's all very nebulous and weird because it's totally irrational and non-verbal and undescribable and non-linear. But this is irrational and weird and non-linear. So, no surprise, really. But humans like to pretend everything makes sense. Good luck with that.
So you gave the example of kind of there's, and it's not just two, but there's the normal life, both with stuff happening, problems, good stuff, bad stuff, whatever, and then there's all this other.
Yeah.
Do they inform one another?
Sure, of course.
It seems that my experience of this other life has been seriously perturbed by perhaps the other. I'm not sure why it's being perturbed, but it seems like that almost feels like a ship that's sinking.
Sure.
And little by little, I'm kind of moving over to the other side.
Sure. You can feel like that. You can feel like that. And it's not literally like that either. I mean, see, what you really are is a vast, inconceivable transcendental system, let's call it. Okay? and its process shows up as whatever seems to actually be happening for you. So it can show when you're wandering around, when you're a young, foolish person wandering clueless through life, that's what its process looks like. And then you get a little older and maybe a little wiser or a little school of hard knocks-ish or whatever, and you begin to sort of, wait a minute, you begin to question things. And then, but that's what its process looks like at the time. It's running the show the whole time. So it's not like you need to turn over the reins to it or something. It's always firmly driving the vehicle, so to speak. But its perspective is totally alien to you as long as you're identifying yourself with, your historical persona and your embodied, you're you and the drama of your life as a human being. Because you're not actually that, and it is not actually that, and it knows it. So it can't translate very well into that sort of a genre or context.
It's like the identification with that drama of a human is getting less and less tolerable.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is very typical for people. I mean, you're here this weekend, so why are you here? If it was tolerable and you were just lost in it and going along hunky-dory, why would you come to this bizarre weekend across the country? It wouldn't have happened. The fact that you're here shows that, yeah, that's obviously the case or something along those lines.
It's kind of like an allegiance is shifting.
Yeah.
And in particular, as the discomfort in sort of normal human existence increases, the allegiance decreases to it. It's still there, but there's less. That's me.
Well, this is the very nature of this process. It's kind of like a shifting of center of gravity. Yeah. It's not an actual change because what you are, you have always been, and you're never going to be anything other than that. But what it can seem to be can be profoundly different depending on sort of how you're sitting in it. And that's really what unfoldment it consists of. It's kind of a shift of perspective or a shift of center of gravity. It's not an actual change of circumstances. A totally realized person and a totally clueless, samsaran are actually exactly identical. They're one and the same. They're just seeing it from different perspectives. Realization consists of seeing it from sort of the machine language. I don't know if you're a computer person.
Oh, well, hey. Programmed in machine
language. Well, then you know. Okay, so this is I've got an analogy for you, girl.
Okay.
So realization is seeing it all from the machine level. And delusion is seeing it all from the consumer level. All you're seeing is the window and the game you're playing or the app you're running or the word processing. But what's really happening is all these ones and zeros and flashes of quantum states in the CPU, and that's what's really happening. And that's the perspective, the essential perspective of realization. It's not any different. It's the same condition. It just looks different from different perspectives, depending upon how you're looking at it.
And it seems to me that what you're pointing to, the understanding more the underpinnings, there's no automatic hook to help fix the little human life.
There's nothing to be fixed.
That's not what it's about.
No, it's not a problem. Human life is actually not a problem. We think of it as a problem. We're full of self-loathing, and we hate our lives and we hate our humanity. And I mean, this is just part and parcel of psychology. But it's not actually like that. Everything that you are, even in your more superficial aspects, is there precisely as part of your process. But your process is inconceivable and vast and has absolutely nothing to do with what it looks like from a human perspective. So the reason that it happens to look like that is unfathomable. It makes no sense. I mean, this is why success and failure in human terms are completely irrelevant in terms of spirituality. Worldly success and worldly failure has absolutely nothing to do with your actual condition. If it's your inherent process that your karma should look like a slow motion or a speeded up train wreck, that's completely irrelevant, because that's exactly what it needs to be for you to be what you actually are, doing what you actually are doing, which is completely inconceivable in human terms.
That implies some kind of like patterning or like God type thing.
Or what was that last one?
God,
Yeah.
as opposed to chaos, just because how things are operating in the background of my world, your world, her world, and of course my friend over here.
Your enemy, your punching bag.
Yeah, your punching bag. Yeah, whatever shows up in our world views or our, craziness or whatever. It's all designed it's all about me. It's all designed for me.
I've been telling you that all weekend long. This is your universe. This is your reality. It's all about you. It's all here for you. It's all your show. Yeah, totally. No, I have no problem with God. I'm all about God. Yay, God. I am God, in fact.
Okay. But so is she, and so are you.
Well, that's your problem. If you exist, you're
You thought
God.
it was all about you. It's really all about me.
Well, there's no contradiction there. It is all about me. And it may be all about you too. And there's no contradiction. It's just weirder than that. It doesn't have to make sense. You and me aren't at odds just because we're each the supreme deity of all of reality. And we aren't in harmony either, but it's just not like that.
Like the ones and zeros and pixels and things that show up in my world are sort
Yes.
of all designed to help Lisa, for lack of a better word, evolve.
Yes, it's all your process. Everything that happens is inconceivably precise and inconceivably intentional.
And I can think that train wreck really sucks, which it
Right.
may,
Yeah.
or it's all designed to help me.
Yeah, it's all your process. Everything that happens is precisely your perfect process in ways that makes absolutely no sense from a human perspective. But the human perspective is an absurdity anyway. It's totally inaccurate.
And thank God for that.
Tell me about it. I'm with you. Been there.
Because
Been there, done that.
that's almost a relief in a way.
No, it's a big load off when you begin to get a sense of what's going on here. I mean, that's why it's called liberation, because you're liberated from all of the sort of guilt and importance and the weight of wrestling through this quagmire of your life that is such a pain in the ass, And correct me if I'm wrong, but speaking for myself, I can but extrapolate that something similar may or may not be the case. But it's not. But it turns out that it's not actually like that at all. And my God, what a load off! Isn't that nice?
Like if I just get myself out of the way and let it do its thing.
And even if you don't get yourself out of its way, it's already doing the thing because you're not in its way. But you have the opportunity of noticing that, and then you will feel less like you're in your way, and you'll be feeling more the power and the authority of it doing its thing, and so you'll feel very empowered from that.
I think I've got glimpses of that. But I can go on a power trip too, like.
Hey, who can't?
Superhuman.
Hey. I am the Lord. I am the second coming.
Yeah.
You may kiss my toe. Or not.
But I think in the state there's a disinterest in that, like just a total disinterest. I know everything's coming from my whole world view, but so how do you fit into my worldview? How does she fit into my worldview?
You can't answer that question because it's not something that makes sense or is linear or can be explained or described. It's like a weird art form. It's like this weird performance art form that's actually some super hyper-functional supercomputer that looks like some weird art form. So why is this shade of red there? Why is this line here? why is that crazy person over there? Why is this person here annoying me? It's like, those questions are unanswerable. That's just what it happens to look like, describing it in those terms.
And in my worldview, that crazy bird
Yeah.
thing is
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
you
good.
all are here agreeing with me that there's a crazy bird thing over there.
Maybe yes, maybe no.
Okay.
Maybe you're hearing me agree, but am I really agreeing? But it doesn't matter. See, what I think doesn't matter to you. What matters to you is what's going on there. And what's going on there turns out to be really interesting and cool, so just play with that. And it doesn't make any sense, so you can let go of worrying about the fact that it doesn't make any sense, and just let yourself sort of sink into it, like sinking back into a warm hot tub, and dig it, you know, open to it, trip on it.
Yeah, maybe I've seen a little bit of the negative side of this whole spiritual thing. So it's like I don't want to wake up or something and find out I've let myself slip into.
Oh my God, I've joined a cult. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't sign away another paycheck.
Yeah. Although I don't see how it's getting worse than some of the other things are crazy for myself. Anyway.
But the point is, have fun with it, play with it, you know, and you don't need to push your own boundaries. You know, if you're not comfortable with something, just say no, not today, thank you. So doesn't need to be threatening or precarious or anything. You know, you can proceed at your own speed and play with it in any way you want. But the opportunity that it is here to play with, that's just an open invitation, and you can play with it anytime you want, to whatever degree you feel comfortable with. And hey, cool, nice. It's like there's a door just always standing open. You can go poke in that door and peek through it and walk through it and stick your hand through it anytime you want, and just explore what's on the other side with your own speed or whatever you want. Or you don't have to go at all. You just look through the door and say, "Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a door there." Mm-hmm.
Contact isn't linear anyway.
Yeah, of course not. This is all just metaphor. It's not really like that. This is all bullshit. Yes.
So I recently had this like online disagreement with a former teacher who was, and so it's just like kind of in my mind right now being reiterated. I might be like misunderstanding something here, but so he was like saying you have to work through all your stories and your concepts, and you have to let go of them and
Oh my God.
be liberated. And so I said to him, I think it's like the opposite. Liberated, they fall away, and you know, struggling with them doesn't get you any closer.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, all right. So, and I was like thinking, am I you know, part of me was like, why are you a teacher? Because you're spouting a bunch of shit, you know. And I wasn't that rude online. But I was just kind of, and he says, you know, you're the one who gave me Jen McKenna's books, and don't you understand that you have to work through your stories and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, it's like the concepts and stories really aren't a problem. I mean, they're there and they keep your attention, and then something else is going on that I have no control over, right? You know, it's like, you know, and they're entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know, it's like my stories entertain me until they bore me, and then they fall away.
And you find a whole lot of new
Sure.
ones.
I find new ones because humans like seem to do that,
Yeah, sure.
or at least I seem to do that.
Yeah. There's all sorts of dimensions and subsystems floating around, and you can explore them or participate in them as much or as little as you choose. And so the stories and the persona and the neuroses and all that stuff, it's there, and you can play with that anytime you want, and that's probably not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So, you know, you can poke at it anytime you want, but that's not the only thing that's going on. There's so much more going on, and in terms of everything else that's going on, it essentially has virtually nothing to do with that stuff.
Right.
So you don't. It's not like that's where I have to work. I have to work here. This is the pathway. No. The pathway is anywhere you can find it, and the more artful you are, and the more clever you are, and particularly the more intelligent you are, you'll probably choose the easiest way you can find it rather than the hardest. And wrestling with your shit is probably not the easiest way you can find unless you're not very artful or you're a masochist or something.
Yeah, they're working with that one.
I mean, you know, my approach, my argument is, hey, slip out the back. So there's this big messy problem here, and the back door is standing open. There's some really amazing stuff out there. Make the call. Should I sit here and wrestle with this pile of crap, or should I just like slip out the back and do something else? It's like, okay, you have the choice. But you don't. It's not like, oh, I can't leave the back. I can't leave because that would be irresponsible. Or I would have left my karma unresolved.
I would like to work through every single story.
There's no such thing as, here, look, there's actually no such thing as working through. Karmic situations do not have a solution. You do, you know, you have the problem and you wrestle with it, and what does that lead to? Other problems. And you wrestle with those, and what does that lead to? Guess. Right. And it goes on unending. You can't solve karmic circumstances. But karmic circumstances are a very small portion of what you actually are, where you actually live. So you don't need to be immersed in that all the time. You don't need to have, like, you know, the CNN on your TV all the time. You can like put on a comedy every once in a while, or a sci-fi show, or a science show, or something. You don't need to like be staring at the horror of government or something more. You can if you want, but you know, if that's how you're inclined, you don't need to.
And it isn't like, I mean, if that's what you like doing, I happen to not like watching the news, but if that's what you like doing, it's not necessarily going to get you any closer, any further to liberation.
Yes. Liberation is what every and anything is, not what you do with it. The powerful fact is what things are, what things are made of, what things consist of, including, you know, our shitty personalities and our horrible circumstances and our crappy histories. What that actually is in fact liberation, because that's what I call, in fact, it turns out to be nothing other than inconceivable radiance, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, transdimensional intelligence. I mean, you can throw, you know, just glorious metaphors at it all day. But it is what it is, and what it isn't is anything you can think it is. And so the whole point of all this is to see what anything is, and that's what liberates it. Not by solving it or processing it or winning the game or losing the game or any of that stuff.
So for instance, if a story comes up and then I kind of just say, oh, the story's coming up and I can be as interested in it as I want. And
sure.
Somehow it came up and I don't even know where it came from. And I mean, I can kind of go through the back door by just noticing that. Yeah.
You can go through the back door by going through it. You can go through the back door by bypassing. You can go through the back door by running, swimming the other direction. Because whatever's happening, there's always infinitely more and infinitely other happening simultaneously, which is just as actual and just as viable.
I'm interested in the magic today, over this weekend. Magic tricks,
yeah.
That's where my
you Shavites are always like that. Okay, let's get down to the magic.
The magic.
Well, this is
the magic.
Well, this is interesting. Magic is all about apparition. Magic is all about patterning. So there's this radiance, right? That's what's really here. It's a field of radiance. You can think of it as being like the ultimate Rorschach block, you know. And this radiance, this Rorschach block can look like anything. And magic comes where it's looking like one thing, attention all of a sudden looks like something else. That's magic. That's the very essence of magic. Magic, the basis of magic is that nothing in particular is actually ever the case. Okay? And when something seems to be the case, it's just you're just seeing it that way. And it's possible through artfulness to see it in another way, at which point it will become something else. That's the essence and the basic formula of magic, and that applies across the book. And then it's down to the artfulness of your own slipperiness and cleverness and deceitfulness, and the degree to which you can take advantage of it. The degree to which you can break your own rules.
I can't believe that she said, because I was just as she said the word magic, I said, oh, I remember what I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask her about magic. magic sort of seems to me just a little bit different than sort of obvious patterning. Because, for instance, where I thought about magic today is I'm watching our car ahead of our car, and I see two cars just sort of very artfully merge, you know, and one's going off in the other lane, the other one's going that lane.
Uh-huh.
And the lane over here was, you know, you had to exit.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, that to me seemed just so magical. I mean, one on the part of just me watching it, but also on the part of whatever demon was in the car. That was, you know, it just didn't make any sense, and it just never seemed to be obviously. There's just some things that it just seem magical.
Sure.
That you can't explain.
Sure. Well, you can't explain anything.
Well, that's true.
So magic is afoot.
But when I think of patterning, sometimes I think that you can use that for a temporary.
But if those two cars had crashed into each other, that would have been equally artful and equally magic.
It made me a lot more fun.
Well,
Oh wow! Did you see that?
No, because I've seen that, and then I go, oh my God, look at that,
Maybe.
it's about to hit, and bang. And it's like, wow.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that could be
Depends on your taste.
another.
Some of us are perverse enough that we're rooting for the accident.
No,
Oh, they almost crashed. Darn it.
But, and part of what you're talking about is like if you kind of are paying attention, there's a lot of entertainment value. It's like you say, oh, wow, that was really cool the way that happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
instead of like, you know, whatever you're doing, oh, I gotta get there in time. And blah, blah, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, well, that's
Okay, if we look at the etymology of magic, it ultimately comes from the same root as Maya, which basically means the apparition of patterning, which seem, in other words, the things seem to be a certain way. And of course, we're all very familiar with patterning. We're all very familiar with the fact that there seems to be all this patterning, which is the basis for things seeming to be a certain way. And the way this patterning works is very interesting, both in terms of the way it works explicitly within itself, like the cars merging, and also the way it works where one pattern is seen as one thing can be seen as something completely and utterly different, which is another aspect of the way patterning works. So every aspect of the way patterning works is part and parcel of this art of magic. And so if you want to learn magic, study the patterning and study the way it works and study the way the patterning works with respect to perception. Study the way the pattern, stage magic, exoteric magic is basically a distraction of attention, you know. The magician stands here and does something over here, and then he pulls a rabbit out of a hat over here. And because you're looking over here, you don't see the rabbit, or you don't see the sleight of hand. So, but that's just a gross example of exactly the way attention interacts with the radiance, the way attention interacts with virtual patterning, where the focus of attention creates reification, creates actuality, makes something seem to be real. And the shifting of attention, or attention from a different perspective or a different point of view, changes the reality. And, it's down to you, the individual, to explore that for yourself and play with it and discover how artfully in different ways you can explore that or participate in it or take advantage of it.
for me today, sitting here, it's like this, quite often it became, I can't say what it is.
Mhm.
And the figure's there, and it just like this, and the sun comes off, and then change back. But it doesn't feel like it's like solid room and
Mhm.
picture and blah, blah, blah. It changes to something I can't say. It's
Sure.
Maybe it's a light or whatever.
Sure.
I really don't know.
Because it isn't anything in particular. The nature of patterning, like we were talking about yesterday, patterning is infinite. So patterning, because it's infinite, you can't tell what anything is. Things seem to be a certain way through not looking too closely. If you just glance at it, then your superficial take on it becomes what you think it is, and you hold it that way. But when you look closer, you discover, oh my gosh, there's all this detail, there's all this variation, there's all this morphing, there's, you know, and any experience becomes a bottomless sea of qualities, none of which are particularly in harmony with the other qualities that are there, or consonant or coherent. They don't come together into a whole. On the contrary, they split apart. We've been talking about this over and over the last 2 days. However, if you look at any experience and are with it more and more intimately, its very nature of it is it opens up into being more than what you started with. And then you look at that, and that opens up into more. And this infinitely just goes on indefinitely. You never hit bottom. You never hit what anything really is. So the very nature of experiential patterning is, you know, the way things seem to be specific and solid is through being superficial with them, through being overly simplistic with them. If you look very closely at what any experience is, you discover this inherently infinite property of unresolvability, where exactly what it is cannot be said. It doesn't, you know, experience doesn't converge into wholeness. On the contrary, it diverges into broadness. So whatever your starting point of an experience is, you look at it, you know, the simplistic materialist thinking would be, well, the more I study it, the more it's going to be it, and the more I'll know about it, and the more precisely I'll know exactly what it is. But experience is exactly the opposite of that. The more you look at something, the more you find out in terms of what it seems to be, and everything you find out doesn't build on what you already knew. It's something new, it's something different, and each of that again opens up into something different, So you have this very strange situation where the patternings are inherently divergent. So when you study them and investigate them, rather than coming together into being more and more themselves, they open up into being more and more not anything in particular. You know, and of course, as we've said a couple of times, the Buddhism calls this property emptiness. You know, that things are empty of self-nature. In other words, when you go looking at anything, you don't find it. It's not like I'm going to study it closer and closer, and I'll find what it is, because they're close to me. It's the opposite. The more you study something, the less it is, and the more it opens up into being more complex and more nebulous. So all patterning has this inherent property. And so, you know, again, in these kinds of experiences where things seem to be a certain way, then they open up and all this. This is just letting yourself drift through different perspectives of, you know, being with it with some degree of superficiality, where then it seems to be stable, it seems to be a certain way. Then you look closer, it's sort of, all of a sudden you're in a different perspective where it presents with essentially a very different quality. And there's no end to the possible perspectives with any degree of patterning. And that's all that there is here. So it's like a Rorschach blot. There's incredible specificity. It's all the specific, exactly that color and exactly that point in my field of vision, exactly all the specificity, but every single bit of that specificity is unresolvable. So if I take anything that's exactly that, look at that exactly that, and it opens up into being more complex than that. It doesn't open up into being more simple and more coherent. It opens up into being more divergent and more complex. So what is anything? There's no answer to that question, because when you investigate, you find more and more, and it's less and less any one way. And, you know, this is very obvious. Experience is like that. It's always been like that. You know, we've all known that when we were kids. You know, all our lives we've known this. This is not particularly esoteric or surprising. But that it is absolutely true across the board is very powerful, because that means that there is no true perspective. If things seem to be a certain way, look at it from another perspective and they'll seem to be another way. And look at it from another perspective and they'll seem to be another way. And so you can take advantage of this property in various ways to get yourself unstuck from a particular perspective you're locked into that's problematic or so on. Or just as an art form, to sort of enjoy surfing through different virtual panoramas of what seems to be going on. You know, and especially this becomes interesting when you look at self-image, because you yourself your image of what you are is a similar phenomenon. When you look more closely at what you are, again, you don't move more and more into coherence of, oh, now I'm getting sharper, clearer idea of who I am. It's just the opposite. You look at who you are, right? I mean, you look at who you are, and it's just, whoa, gosh, I'm pretty weird, and then you look closer, and I'm even weirder than that. It doesn't move into coherence. It opens and opens and opens. Like that experiment we were talking about, I think yesterday, or was it this morning, where look at your own face for 10 or 15 minutes in the mirror. Just look at your face, trying to figure out what your face looks like. The longer you look, the less you'll know about what you look like, which is opposite of conventional logic. You study something, then you get a handle, you get more and more of a handle on it the more you study it. But it's not like that, is it? The more you study something, the less it is any one particular way, and the more variety it opens up about what it is. And so this is essential to the mechanism of what's called samsara nirvana, what can be called delusion and realization, or bondage and liberation, and so on and so forth. Seeing things as being a certain way, and that you are a certain way, and you're stuck in things a certain way, and woe is you, is bondage, is delusion, is samsara. But if you look very closely, you'll discover that everything you're stuck in, the you that you're stuck being, the circumstances you're stuck being in actuality, aren't stuck. They aren't rigid. They aren't a certain way. They're open-ended and infinite. And in fact, absolutely open-ended and absolutely infinite. So there's no you, there's no circumstances, and there's no stuckness. And this is plain to see simply by investigating, simply by looking. And this is the path of inquiry. This is the path of yoga, of looking at what you are and discovering that you're not what you feared you were. You're something remarkable and amazing, by contrast with what you thought you were. Let's take a 5-minute break. Kind of mid-afternoon slump. Get up and stretch. Run a few laps. Get in a fight with your neighbor. Go take some drugs. There's others for you to run.
Those cushions are so old. Yeah, the attached every which way.
Ancient history.
Oh, they are. They've been around since the start of this place. We don't live in this house, not that. When I put my foot on it, it's just. Yeah. Someone will get around to patching it up, Well, they've patched up a few of them, but yeah, probably not. You already stuff. We used to have a lot of time. There's too many. I know. I kind of should kind of touch it. Yeah. Still not enough. Have to do enough. Yeah, right. Oh, that was so fun. I want one of those.
I'll try that.
But then you have to find something in the same category I want to get rid of. Do that category. I finally realized I have too many yoga mats. Okay, 1 or 2 of these are getting donated.
Does anyone really need 24 yoga mats?
I don't have that
If you're
many.
not running a class.
I don't have.
Okay, 1 dozen.
But I must say, they're all useful in different ways.
They each have their quality, right? You can't
Right.
bear it apart in
Okay. All right. Well, donated to the yoga studio.
I know. But they can encourage us. Yeah.
They sell a lot of stuff.
Do they have stuff like this?
Yeah, there's a place on Center that has a bunch of big statues and big things like that. In San Anselmo, if you're going.
Look at the antique Ganesh over here in the corner with the serpent. That's exquisite. That's a nice piece, and that's old. Yeah, that's the real thing.
Yeah. They got taken out of somebody's.
Yeah.
I don't know what the name of the road is, but.
Yeah.
All right.
But they have tokens and stuff.
I don't know if they have Tonkas, but they do have the big statues and that sort of.
So what is the
There's
story
another
with
place somewhere in San Anselmo.
the image in that Tonka? Is it just
He
that
does have quite a
anything
collection
can
of
emerge
Tonkas.
from that
And most of them are
non-distinct
consignment,
image?
but I haven't seen.
Well, I think it's an image of, I think it's Padmasambhava actually, but it's an image. It doesn't matter in particular. It's supposed a historical figure from Tibet, but it's an image of that he's not actually substantial, that his body isn't actually physical, but is made of lead. I mean, it's similar to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's disturbing to me though.
Well,
It's like somebody didn't finish the painting.
right, some kind of an optical illusion.
Yeah,
it's
it's
op art.
because those things you were talking about today. Those
Yeah.
I can never find anything.
No, a lot of
in them.
people are like that. Yeah, I was like that for the longest time, for years when I first saw it. People just pretending to see something.
Yeah.
I remember the first time it happened. I was like, oh, I saw how to do it. Like,
Yeah, I know there's a trick.
once you get the trick, then it becomes easy. But you have to kind of.
It's like I'm too impatient. It's like
The trick to those images is you start really close. When you relax your eyes that close, you find it very easily. Then you just start pulling away slowly while maintaining your relaxed state and the vision of the thing. And there's a point at where you lose it or not, and you come back a little bit. And then after a while, you can actually just look at the page, relax, and you find it. It takes practice. It's just a meditation. You are busy. Yeah.
I'm too busy.
Yeah. There's lots to look at in here, isn't there?
Yeah.
It is. I like some of the dragons though, like that winged dragon there. I could see putting that in my room.
Yeah.
Just because it's wild.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just wild. It's wild. 1950? Another what? No, tiger. Peter and I are tigers.
Tiger, that means December?
No, the year, 1950.
Yeah, I'm also a tiger,
Are you what year?
50.
Oh,
December 9th, and you?
November 20th, Peter's November 12th.
So we both Sagittarius, are we?
I'm on the cusp, I've got the best of all worlds. I'm on the cusp of Scorpio and Sagittarius, the two best signs, right?
Scorpio.
Yeah.
With the Leo rising, somebody had this thing on
Oh, yeah.
Facebook, it was like the evil signs, and it's like Scorpio, Leo, Virgo.
I see
I got 'em all
Yes,
covered.
Virgo.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I do that.
You'll have an easier time with it, I
Finally.
guess.
Sagittarius,
But a Libra rising, that helps. No, I'm practically falling asleep. Made it easy to have girls
It's
and
neat. It's one of those
Libras
big
for twins, that's perfect.
But
I know three of us always got on really well. Have you spent much time with Peter
Well,
Brown?
I love this.
No,
I used to see him. Did you see this? Oh, you're kidding? Turn around. And the seam doesn't look like it goes.
Then I
really
think he
on the
disappeared.
side. Oh, it goes a little. Not much.
I think he lives in the same place.
No, now it's
Taking
saying.
a shot. She's very
Oh, big.
hard, but she's
He
got a-
did exercise.
But he's
Look how
only
pretty
dead.
it
No,
looks.
it's
It's a
just
great
good.
idea, 'cause it's very
But now
fun.
he thinks, yeah.
It's
But
cute.
before he gets to even
You had somebody do that.
Oh, really? I saw him about 10 years ago here.
Because it just looks,
For a while, I thought I got it. I thought
Oh
it
my
was
goodness,
horrible.
now
Are you
I know when I
fucking-
go secondhand
I
shopping,
live in San Francisco.
and I see something that's a little too big, but
I have a teacher that named David Sparrow who does.
that I
He
know
was
of,
kind of my
yeah.
teacher after Peter and
Whatever.
Oh,
sometimes
that'd
I
be
see
nice.
Pamela Wilson.
And this side of the bay or your side of the bay?
Yeah.
You're not working at Clinton?
She's a nice girl.
Oh, no.
It's not, she doesn't want you to have a,
Right.
I walk around a lot.
she has a
I walk
more
around a
typical
lot.
perspective.
Got a lot of
Very
now, but I was out in the mill.
I do that too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, right now, everything's blooming. We have a
Yeah.
zillion
But
birds
he's
of
doing
paradise and
it.
the jasmine and the, whatever the little flowers are called. Oh, you should, speaking of garden, you should see Helen's. got
You see
two green thumbs.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's one reason.
Blueberry, some other.
That's the value of
I
it.
dropped it.
Okay. Like we have this.
We had one.
And what is it?
Broccoli is.
It's actually a plant cow. Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
Me too. If I could, I would knock them out of fence. Carrots, on the camp.
Yeah.
But then I would just put the landscape.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad they hired you.
I've been trying to grow things.
I'm very grateful. That was a long time.
So Michelle's talking about.
Squash plant that was like, it would make.
No, you guys came back on your own. What's up with that?
You like scrubbing? Yeah. I like similar buildings. My big future would be good. Warm and live in a hot and wood
So
down.
it works.
Yeah.
I think it's more than one.
No, I told the girls that.
You don't have-
Welcome back, Ish. So I want to reiterate, this stuff is all for you. It's all something for you to play with, for something to you to enjoy and toy with, or not, to the extent you're interested, to the extent, this is not something that you need to fit yourself into, that's some sort of eternal truth that you need to like somehow bow down to or accommodate to. This is just a possibility. It's a, it's an invitation to play with stuff. And to enjoy yourself and to empower yourself and to explore some of your own opportunities, some of your own inherent, possibilities. So it's really, it's all about you. It's all about you. I mean, it's all about you in so many profound ways, but it's all about you in superficial ways too. So, so anything from your perspective, from your take on things, we can look at that too. It doesn't have to be in my terms, in terms of the way I'm presenting things, the way I'm saying things. You don't have to agree with me. I mean, it's all, everything I'm saying isn't true anyway. It's all just, suggestions and innuendo that may have some possibility as an invitation to explore, to look further, to play with things. What's actually true can't be said. And since I'm doing a lot of saying, obviously none of it's true. But hopefully it's not totally useless or totally valueless.
When I am looking at things, I see that, at first I think I'm looking at it three-dimensional, and I see it changing to more as a two-dimensional, and then I see it sort of, I don't know, get foggy,
Sure.
and expand. And then I think about what you said about it. This could all be like a big Rorschach picture. And I remember looking at, that little test where you look at two dots and one disappears. So I'm wondering, that's an optical illusion. So is that magic? Is that happening? I mean,
both. Magic is just the way things seem to happen. Because happening means appear. Appearing is happening, and happening is appearing. If something's happening, that's a euphemism for something's appearing. If something's not happening, that means it's not appearing. So, and the way things appear is very interesting and slippery, as we've been playing with. So, and magic is all about the way things appear. So yeah, it's all magic, all this magic. But you don't need to, calling it magic doesn't make it special. You can also call it the nature of perception, or the nature of the way consciousness perceives its experiential information, and so on and so forth.
I think magic is, it's not real.
No.
So,
Well, in a way, it's not. In a way, magic points to that any particular version of things isn't real, because there's another version which is equally viable, which is different.
so when I would see.
So it's three-dimensional, or it's flat, or it's cloudy. It's not that one of them's real and one of them isn't. It's real, it can look like that. And it is real that it can look like that. And then you go to sleep and it all disappears, and that's real too. And you start dreaming and then something else appears, and that's real too. But what's real is real appearing. But that's all there is real appearing.
Sometimes I ask myself over and over, am I imagining this? How much of this is illusion? How much is imagination?
Well, imagining is a kind of appearing. Imagining is appearing in the portion, the bandwidth of experience we call imagination, which is a kind of a mental picturing functionality or something, whatever. I mean, obviously, I can't define it. And so anything that is imagination. And much interpretation occurs in imagination, even if it's sort of smeared with a sensory perception. So you can have a sensory perception of a certain configuration of colors and lights, and then you can have imagination that it is a certain way, and those two can seem to sort of merge and become what you're experiencing. But in actuality, if you sort of deconstruct it, you can sort of pull it apart. Kind of, we did that little experiment yesterday, where you sort of look at your field of vision, and you notice your field of vision sitting there, and you can look at your field of thought and notice it sitting there, and your field of thought sitting there, and your field of vision sitting there, but they don't step on each other. They're each happening in their own kind of bandwidth, in their own little bubble of real estate or what have you. So, and ordinarily we don't bother to be that careful with it. It's all just sort of all happening, and we sort of smear it all together as a whole. But if you look very carefully, you can notice that all of these different gradations or bandwidths of experience are happening sort of in their own little turf, and they don't actually interact with each other. they don't get in each other's way. What you're thinking doesn't actually block or change what you're seeing, and vice versa. Even though, again, in practice it can get confused because we tend to kind of smear them together in real time. Yeah, well, you can do it on your own anytime you want. Just take a minute and take your field. Say, okay, here's my field of experience present. What's present? Just sort of take an inventory and start with the real obvious stuff. So, the first place you might start, for most people who are very visual, you might say, okay, here's the field of vision. It's sort of floating here like a kind of a sideways oval with fuzzy edges, and everything that is showing up as vision is appearing as imagery, as patterns of light and color in that. Okay, that's sitting there. What else is there? Well, there's sound. Sound isn't happening in the same area, so to speak. It's not like it's literally a spatial area, but it's sort of happening in its own little dimension. So there's this whole dimension of sound, and you can experiment. You can be with the dimension of sound and close your eyes and watch how the field of vision changes, but the field of sound doesn't change. Changing the field of vision doesn't change the field of sound. And then you can look at the field of thought, for example, say while you're experiencing the presence of the field of vision attentively, just relax and just play with it. You notice, well, there's thought happening, and you can sort of be with that, and you can notice the textural difference. How can you tell the difference between vision and thought? Well, they have different textures. They have different sort of densities. I mean, you can't specify it precisely, but you can tell instantly. And if you look, you can notice, wow, light has a certain sort of a texture to it, and thought has its own kind of texture that makes it. That's how I know I'm thinking, and I know I'm not seeing something. If thought had the same texture as vision, I might get confused, and when I'm thinking I'm seeing something. But it doesn't seem to work like that in any simple way. And so you can kind of just play a game like that, where you take an inventory and sort of deconstruct your experience, and sort of take the separate components out and put them. And you can look, okay, where's emotion? What's that made of? And you find the sense of touch. Sense of touch is its own little bubble. It's its own thing, and it is floating in its space. And field of vision is in its space, and sound is in its space, and thought in its space, and smell and taste and whatever. And then you can look and you can notice, well, I've done all the senses, but that doesn't cover everything. There's something else there. All this other little weird tingles and zings and vibes and stuff that isn't really it's not really thought. It's not really emotion. It's not really sensation or vision. So all of a sudden you discover, oh, there's extrasensory stuff. There's experiential qualities that are not classified by human beings within a sense field. Surprise, surprise. And so on. You can go on and explore. So how many gradations of subtlety are there of that? And there's no limit to the kind of exploration you can do with this. And the point isn't to hold it that way or anything. The point is just to sort of, notice, let yourself notice carefully these portions, instead of having them all sort of smeared together unconsciously, as we typically do in our day-to-day functioning. So you can sort of take a moment and deliberately deconstruct it and see what's there. Just play with it. All those kinds of things. And then you can get very specific and take field and really investigate. So you can be with, like, say, the field of vision and say, okay, what is light? All that's appearing here is light. There's no objects appearing. There's just patterns of light, right? And typically the mind takes these patterns of light and associates them as objects. Oh, there's people in the room and pictures and blah, blah, blah. But in actuality, all there is patterns of light. It's like you're looking at a cartoon or a movie or a TV show. It's just patterns of light. And so what is light? And surprisingly, you can actually see light itself, particularly if you contrast it with something like sound or touch. You can say, well, this is the presence of light. This is the presence of touch. What's the same about them and what's different about them? And you can zoom in very precisely. I mean, it's not verbal. You can't say what it is, but you can zoom in very precisely on, well, what is light? What is this texture of light? What is light? And it's not like you can answer that question or put it in a sentence, but you can learn a whole lot about light by feeling it. Because you are feeling it. It's present in your experience, so that means you're feeling it. Your consciousness is feeling the presence of light. And you feel, well, what does light feel like? It has a very distinctive texture, it turns out. And sound has a distinctive texture. You know, touch has a distinctive texture. All these aspects have a distinctive texture. And you can look very precisely at what each of them is. You can explore it anyway. I mean, don't worry about it. It's not like there's going to be a test or something.
No. It's been like sometimes I feel like there's just a slight shift, and it allows you to see the light, the light, and it's odd.
Sure. But we're not used to noticing this light. We usually bypass the medium and go right to what we think we're looking at. I'm not looking at light. I'm looking at you. But then if I back up a little and say, well, wait a minute. I'm not really seeing you. I'm seeing a pattern of light. And my mind is holding it to be you. And so you can sort of deconstruct that and pull that apart and notice, well, no, there's light, and it's just light. And then it's easier to see light because it's not being confused by being sort of just smeared together with all sorts of other stuff and being assumed to be one thing.
Sometimes I'm looking at a tree, and it's like it just shifts.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's not the tree, it's the light.
Sure.
But then it's hard to hold it.
But you don't need to hold it because it itself isn't stable. No, because like I said, like we've been talking about, it's not really resolvable. It doesn't resolve to. It's not like light is a certain fixed thing that you're going to find it and then to sit there and it's going to be that and you're going to just be bang and that's it. It's locked in. It's not like that. Light is itself unresolvable. You know, you can't get to the bottom of what light is. You can't get to the bottom of what anything is. Everything, you know, I don't know if I stated it strongly enough. Unresolvability, or let's call it infinity, is an absolutely bare bones, bedrock, essential quality of all reality. So everything and anything cannot be resolved precisely as to what it is. Period. In the strongest possible term. And so this applies to light as well. So when you investigate what light is, you make headway, you penetrate into it, you get insight, you get sort of revelation, but you never get to the end. It's never final. You know, it's always just like, wow, it's really amazing. And you learn a lot. It's not like it's because you get to the bottom, it's not because you don't get to the bottom, it's not like it's valueless. It just means that it's not the kind of thing you can get to the bottom of, and it's value all the way. So basically all exploration is valuable, but no exploration is final. Because you can never get to what anything actually is. Because it isn't anything in particular. You know, it is open-ended infinity intrinsically, which we can't wrap our heads around. I mean, how can you possibly think of that? But nonetheless, you discover that and you explore that very directly, and it becomes very obvious that that's the case.
Is that infinite unresolvability?
Sure. Emptiness, but in Buddhism, what's called emptiness is the same thing they're referring to. At least in the higher schools of Buddhism.
Meaning emptiness of all.
Well, in Buddhism, they call emptiness of self-nature, which means that because self-nature is the idea that something is something. It is itself. It is what it is. And if things had self-nature, then you would be able to find that self-nature. But as we've been talking about, when you investigate things, you don't ever come to a core essence of what it is. On the contrary, you just get these endless vistas and openings without ever getting to an end. So this is exactly what Buddhism means by all dharmas are empty of self-nature. And by dharma, they mean a pattern. So there are no things. Or all things are not any one thing in particular, because when there's anything, you go looking for what that thing is, and you never get to what it is. You never get to bottom. You never hit it. You just get an endless universe of otherness that isn't particularly coherent with all the other stuff that's showing up.
thinking about resolvability, then there's no actual state of enlightenment.
Right. The state of enlightenment consists of the discovery that there is no state of
Yeah,
enlightenment.
right. I mean, recognition of.
Because, yeah, when you discover there's no state of enlightenment, you also discover there's no other state in particular. And that's what enlightenment consists of. The sort of open-ended random access free fall. You ask an enlightened person where they are, they say, I don't know. You ask them who they are, they say, I don't know. And they mean it. They really don't know. They aren't just bullshit.
The recognition of unresolvability.
Yeah. Yeah, sure, of course.
It has to
Yeah. Because bondage consists of some resolvability. You think there is something and it's stuck in something. So there has to be a something for there to be something stuck, and there has to be a something for there to be something stuck in something. But when there's no something to be stuck in and there's no something to be stuck, how can there be bondage? It's just endless weirdness. You can't find anything stuck in anything. It's just like, I don't know. I can't tell if there's stuckness or not. It's too weird. It's just D, none of the above, always.
How does Karna fullness fit with this? You know,
I don't know that term, but I do know fullness, and this is a fullness because it is not lacking anything. It's a complete lack of lack, which is essentially fullness.
there's some ancient prayer that's like, when you take fullness away from fullness, you still have fullness.
Yeah, exactly. You take anything away from this, and it doesn't lose anything. When you go to sleep, you lose everything. You lose all your sensory experience, you lose your life, but it doesn't feel like you've lost anything, does it? On the contrary, it feels like a nice fullness. Okay? And then you wake up, and here's the fullness of all this, and you haven't gained anything, but it's still a fullness. So it's always a fullness. It's never lacking. It's never missing anything. There's never anything that you're deprived of.
The total emptiness and this total fullness.
Yes.
Coexisting, and it's part of the endless
Well,
weirdness of it.
Yeah, in language, in logic, emptiness and fullness continue to be opposites. But in actuality, they aren't opposites, because emptiness and fullness don't refer to quantity. Emptiness and fullness refer to equality. Emptiness means infinity, open-endedness, and fullness means entirety. This is always entirety. It's never not the entirety. And it's the entirety of whatever it looks like. It can look like nothing, and it's not any less entire. And it can look like an inconceivable detail or complexity, and it's not any more entire. Another way to put it is your experience is always full. It may be full of nothing. Like say you're in general anesthesia getting surgery, and it's about as close to zero experience as there can be. But it never actually stops. And it never feels like a lack. It doesn't feel like, oh my God, I've lost so much. It's like, no, it's like, hey, cool, this is nice. Give me more. I want to get these good drugs that the doctors have. They're holding out in us. They got all the good dope in the hospital, and they aren't sharing. What's up with that?
So it's fullness because it can't be anything more than either.
Yeah,
It's everything.
It's no lack. It's everything. Reality is everything, and it's never less than that. And everything is not dependent on what it looks like. Everything is dependent on what it is. It's always the completeness. I mean, experientially, your experience is always full. Every experiential field is full. Your field of vision is always full. You can close your eyes and you can say, I don't see anything, but in actuality, your field of vision is full. It's just full of subtler phenomena. But it's still light. Close your eyes and your field of vision is full of light. When you say, oh, I can't see any light, it's like, look closer. Don't be such a materialist, biased denier. Look at what's actually present. Close your eyes and you're just watching this amazing light show, wall to wall. And same with same with the whole, the whole sense field, the whole experiential bubble, if you will, or whatever. You know, and this is something that can be intuitive, but it can be known very profoundly. That what this is not dependent on what it looks like. What it looks like can come and go. What it looks like can seem to be a loss. You know, I can say I close my eyes and I've lost all the detail of the the external field of vision. But that's just a verbal thing, because what the field of vision is doesn't lose by what it looks like. When all of that complexity disappears, what it is hasn't changed. What it is hasn't diminished in any sense. So, I mean, you've heard me say many times, this can look like anything, but it never departs from itself. It never becomes anything other than what it is. And what it is doesn't increase or decrease. It doesn't become more or less. It doesn't become better or worse. It doesn't become clearer or less clear. Regardless of what it looks like. The appearances can change with a just inconceivably broad spectrum of possibility.
Regardless of what you're able to perceive.
Regardless. And that can change too, and so what? It's like you can dream of anything, but anything you dream of will just be a dream. Right? It never becomes more than dreaming, it never becomes less than dreaming. But it can look like anything. Right? And the same thing with any and all experience. It can look like anything, but what it is doesn't change. And again, this can be felt and known very intimately and very self-verifying. And so you get a sense of, well, I am what this is. This is me. And so what I am is not dependent upon what it looks like. I am not dependent upon any particular experience, and I don't lose anything when the experience looks like something else. I'm not dependent upon looking healthy, and when I look like I'm sick, I'm not any less than I was. I'm exactly the same thing. It just looks different. And ultimately, the logical extrapolation of that is you discover, wow, when I die, I won't have lost anything. Because what this is beyond, utterly and completely beyond what it looks like. And death happens in appearances, just like sleep happens in appearances. When sleep comes and goes, you don't gain or lose anything. Just the appearances come and go. It's like watching the moon waxing and waning or something. The movie projector is not affected by what happens in the movie. You can have a movie about bombs going off in war and fires and stuff, and the movie projector isn't burned or blown up. And likewise, the experience is kind of like a movie. It's just apparition. But what the reason for the apparition being there, which is your being, the actuality of what you are, the presence of your, of you, what it is not dependent on what it looks like. What is seeing your experience now is exactly the same thing it was when you were 2. Everything looks completely different, but what it is exactly the same. It just looks different. So the only thing that changes is what it looks like. What it is never changes.
It seems like I'm more relaxed in here, so that what I look at is as it's distinctive, but the distinctions between the different spots that I'm looking at aren't as important as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The relaxation is a big factor in sort of flexibility and sort of being able to be with your experience more loosely.
Yeah.
You know, we sort of do an unconscious sort of an energy tightening up, and it sort of ramps up identification and ramps up localization and ramps up all of these sort of stucknesses and little locked in things. But when you just relax and loosen up, all that sort of subsides a bit, opens up a bit.
But I think I'm feeling more and caring less about what I see, although I appreciate what I see.
Sure.
Yeah. It was moving. But like there was all these angels on the beach, but they were kind of not like they looked like humans. Sort of. But they were kind of like not angels with wings. They were just shadowy looking people.
Yeah.
So I was just like looking at it here and seeing everybody, and it sort of everybody kind of looked like shadowy people. Like it was just all sort of, I don't know. And then I think, well, that's probably an apparition too. It's just what's showing up in my.
There's nothing but apparitions.
But like thinking about my family, like my mom and dad are no longer alive, and in one way, it almost seems like a dream in a sense, and in another way, they almost seem here.
Sure. Well, they are here. They're here in your experience as thought, as memory, as emotion. And when they were here physically, they were here as well as thought, memory, and emotion, also as sensory information. The sensory information isn't there, but they're still there as thought and emotion, right? You can think of your house where you live, and it's here. It's not here in your field of vision, but it can be here in your field of thought or in your field of memory or whatever. But there's no it. There's just the presence of the experience of that in that field of experiential energy. So when you see me, there's no me. There's just the presence of certain light pattern in your field of vision. And if you think about me, there's just the presence of us. There's no me there. There's just the presence of a certain patterning appearing in your field of thought or whatever. And when you remember your parents or you feel something about your parents, there's no them. There's just a certain patterning in that bit. And when they were here and you saw them, there's still no them. There's just an appearance of a certain patterning of light in your field of vision and so on, right? That's all that's ever present. All these patterns.
Yeah, I guess the way I relate to my past or something, and how I see, I don't know, there seems to be a different way that I'm looking at things. I don't know, like not in a way of like maybe with almost with like a little bit of a detachment or something. So I have feeling present, but there's also this kind of like, it was a movie or it's like, oh, you kind of like that, I guess. I think we're just rather that.
Well, any experience can appear with any degree of, I mean, you could be seeing something right in front of you. You could be seeing this room and have the sense that somehow it's not real. It's a vision or it's a dream. Or you could be seeing the same thing and have a feeling like, oh my God, this is so real and so present and so heavy or whatever. There's just different aspects of the flavors of the way, these patterns can be held and appear. But it's all the same thing. It's just differences of degree. So degrees of detachment or degrees of solidity, let's call it. It's just the same thing, just a matter of emphasis.
which is all basically an illusion.
Yeah, essentially. Well, it's not an illusion, it's an apparition. All appearance is real, but it's real appearance. So you're seeing this room, that's an apparition. If you have a thought of some, say you picture some movie you saw, or you picture, your parents, that's an apparition. But it's an apparition in the field of thought. Seeing this room is an apparition in the field of vision. So it's all these, they're all apparitions. And that it seems to be a certain way is an apparition. That it can seem to be detachment is an apparition.
Okay.
That it seems to be very present and very real and not detached is an apparition. They're all just flavors of apparition is all there is. That's what populates your experience. Flavors of apparition.
Now that everybody knows what's popping in my experience.
Well, they're all the same if they exist. And here's an interesting thing. Your body and your personality is also just an apparition in your experience.
I'd like to change some of that.
But it's just an apparition, so who cares?
I lost 50 pounds.
Like some of the, for me, some very compelling ones are like pain. Like I've had periods of time where I get such severe sciatica that it's like with me all day long. And I've been able to resolve it through the mind-body work, but nonetheless, during the 6 months, one time, 18 months, the other time, it was like first thing in the morning, okay, it's my pain. And I wasn't able to apparition it away or whatever, or disease, like you've got diabetes or cancer or whatever. It's like, how do you deal with these really compelling?
Well, you deal with all the patterns the way you deal with any pattern. And the more skillful you are at dealing with any pattern, the more skillful you can be at dealing with all patterns. And again, it comes from, being skillful in dealing with patterns comes basically from learning that there's many different ways. No pattern is actually locked into being a certain way. Every pattern has a range of ways it can seem to be depending on how it's being experienced. And that range actually is infinitely broad. And so coming to see that directly empowers you. It teaches you the skill set, the tricks to be able to be with any pattern of experience more flexible, including experiences that are problematic like pain and so on. However, it's best to develop those skills when it's some kind of a pattern that's not so loaded like pain or suffering or something that seems to have some importance to it. So it's best to practice, make hay while the sun shines. Practice being flexible with your patterning when it's not really an issue, and then the skillfulness you develop in that context, you'll be able to apply in a context where it seems to be matter more, like for something like pain or disease or something that seems you're holding to be particularly important. It's harder to, it's like, I guess, when you're in a plane that's crashing, the time to learn to pray is not when you're in a plane that's crashing. Maybe. Or, on the other hand, maybe that's a really good time to put up or shut up time. Crash course. But even pain, and again, with pain, it's a good idea to practice with mild pain, and you can actually learn. It's possible to learn to be with pain so it becomes less painful, or so it's not pain at all, or any kind of physical discomfort, or for that matter, mental and emotional discomfort the same way. Basically, any patterning of experience on any level, it's possible to be with these things flexibly, to be not locked into a stuckness with them. But again, you have to it's best to familiarize yourself with how to do that, with the skill set of being able to be loose with your experience.
Are you saying that's enough? Just noticing the sensation that you had considered pain is enough to create a shift, or
it can be if you have the ability to do so.
Well, that actually sounds kind of useful.
Yeah, it's very useful.
How could I start learning that?
Well, there's a lot of ways to learn it. If you want to work with pain particularly, a good way to do it is cultivate a mild pain that's not too painful. Like take a clothespin and put it on your thumb or something that like is uncomfortable, but not like you're climbing the walls wanting to bite someone's head off, right? And then just explore, how can I be with this experience? Sort of make it more painful. Just figure out how to be with it where it's more painful, and figure out how to be with it when it's less painful. Figure out how to be with it where it turns into colors or something. Be with it where it's just these weird textures. You can kind of go into it and go. I mean, it's impossible to verbalize. You kind of have to, do it first person and really play with it. But I think you will discover that it's possible to be with any sensation, as physical sensation or any experiential sensation, really, in a broad range of ways that emphasizes certain aspects of it. It can emphasize its solidity, or emphasize its transparency, or emphasize its sort of fuzziness and openness, or emphasize its closeness. And if you develop the skills of being able to do that, then when you really need it, like in the case of a pain that is really painful, you may be able to take advantage of it.
Would it work with eyesight improvement also?
Possibly. Try and see.
So like your idea.
I would say definitely.
Well, I've been thinking about, for me, I'm so nearsighted that for me a retreat would be take my glasses off as long as the retreat was. And just stay in relatively safe places and just do whatever I could with glasses. It's a completely different experience.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm like that. Yeah. I don't know if I'm the one. I can see better close than far. Is that nearsighted?
Yeah.
I'm a little nearsighted too, not severely.
Uh-huh.
But when if I'm driving or something, I have to be wearing glasses. But I don't. I take them off for these kinds of things because it's nicer to not have that. There's an intimacy, even though the things that are farther from you are a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. There's an intimacy and a sort of a continuity that I kind of like. So I don't wear glasses. I can do this kind of thing. I only wear glasses when I'm driving and moving around the world, basically.
Yeah, it's not me. So there's always a sense of this thing blocks me because
sure, I hear you.
Actually, I noticed it walking uphill. I am stronger with my glasses off.
Sure.
I'll take them off. It's just
I understand
even that little thing will change the whole.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think definitely you might not be able to solve it entirely, but you definitely will discover you have a range of flexibility just by how you're approaching it. I think that's certainly true. You can play with it. Sit in a non-threatening or a non-problematic situation and take your glasses off and just play with it.
Yeah.
Sort of push your own envelope and see how you can sit with it to make it sort of move around or what have you.
Yeah. So a lot of when I study hypnotherapy,
we're talking about hypnosis, basically.
Well, there's a concept that there's an unconscious mind. But are you saying basically that everything is either doesn't exist or is not conscious, it does pop into awareness, and then, so like you talk about, well, some trauma, I have poor vision because of some trauma, but whatever I think I have that happened. But are you saying that basically there's no reservoir of experience that is unaware? It's just that simply magically appearance and disappearance happens.
Well, it's not that simple. It's not that there's unaware and aware and appearance and disappearance.
Right.
I think it's more of a shades of gray. Although we tend to experience it as if it was, we tend to polarize it by being used to experiences that way. But I think if you relax with your experience, it's all about being comfortable with irrationality and being comfortable with undefinability. Because the conscious mind wants to know what things are. It wants to know this is this and that's that. I'm me and you're you. I'm here and you're there. So that's the conscious mind's mode. And the unconscious mind's mode is just sort of this sea of richnesses and vibes and flavors, and all sort of weird and blended together. And the conscious mind can't go there. The conscious mind says, well, what? What is that? That's nothing. It's soup. What's this? You know, the conscious mind says, it's either this or it's that. And so, because we sort of surf along that, you know, we're either in the conscious mind mode or we're not. And typically we're so identified with the conscious mind mode that we don't even notice the fact that we're actually in the unconscious mind as well. But we are conscious in the unconscious mind. But we're conscious in the unconscious mode. So it's kind of like a real-time dreaming behind the scenes or something. It's like a sea of sort of free association that's sort of vague and non-specific, but it's rich and pungent and has qualities. And so, you know, it's really just a matter of kind of tuning into that, and then it stops being so polarized, and you get the sort of the continuity and the sort of the spectrum of it.
Yeah. That sounds a lot like hypnotherapy.
But all of this is exactly, basically all of what we're talking about is exactly what hypnosis is. Because hypnosis is the fact that your experience can seem to be very different depending upon sort of the mindset that you're approaching it, which is how autosuggestion works. But autosuggestion starts from the rational. It starts from like a semantic key, like, you know, you plant an affirmation or a suggestion or something, and then you're using that as a seed to sort of precipitate the reorientation. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can be the opposite. You can start from a kind of a looseness and discover the flexibility that way. Then you can sort of come up from, rather than coming down from the top like specific suggestion does, you sort of come up from underneath.
They had the iceberg model where the mind is 90% unconscious under the water, and that's what basically bites your ass most of the time.
Right.
And then so you start raising the iceberg out, looking at it.
Yeah. Basically, everything we've been talking about this weekend is about relaxing into discovering you're the whole iceberg. And you don't need to polarize it into conscious and unconscious. And the way to do that is by being with your experience more open-endedly and less defining it, less holding it to be this is this and that's that. Just be with it like I don't know what it is. Be with the weirdness, be with the vagueness, be with the slipperiness. And you'll discover you're open to the unconscious mode, because that's how the unconscious is with it already. And it's not like you're learning to do anything new, because you're already actually doing that all the time. You're just not aware of it because we're usually so biased towards the conscious mind that we polarize it off. And we think we are the conscious mind, and we think the rest of it is nothing. But it's just a kind of a censorship. That itself is hypnosis. That the unconscious mind is unconscious is hypnosis. We deny it's there.
Oh, you deny it.
Yeah, because you're not acknowledging that mode. You're not, the slipperiness and weirdness, you're not acknowledging it. You're saying, no, this is this and that's that.
We have to go to work and stuff and fit in boxes.
Yeah, all that stuff. Human society, on the surface of it, is very conscious mind biased, but it isn't really, because no one really works from their unconscious mind. Everyone's really working from their unconscious. Everyone's really going after their lusts and their appetites and their fears and all this stuff, which is all unconscious, vibey, smeary stuff, right? But then the conscious mind has to do a lot of rationalization, justification, and denial, spin doctoring, spin control.
Right.
Why don't we take another 5-minute break, because I know this time of day can get a little blurry after a while. And get up and walk around, get some air, whatever, and then we'll come back for our home stretch and do our last session of the weekend. And until we're basically fried and our brains turn to jello and we can crawl out of here.
Oh, thank God.
Wow.
Well,
think we even took a nap.
You're having a nervous.
Well, yes, or
Yeah.
else, yeah. You've been there before, right?
Yeah, we just need to send it out here once a month.
Everybody just
Yeah,
went in on
Yeah, she's made it so it can be an Airbnb. Yeah, which is very clever.
Yeah.
It's perfect, right across from the bathroom and everything. You know,
I
very
have a
serene,
nice
yes,
place.
yes.
Sure, why not?
I was satisfied with my book, I wasn't.
Once a month, I think
The
now.
problem is, it's like
Like a lot.
2,200.
It's not just LA and Seattle,
Pretty
they come back.
dysfunctional without the glasses, so it's hard
So he only does one.
get to a starting point where I can
Here.
keep from wherever I'm looking to.
He's doing more fused conference calls, so that's kind of nice because it gets,
You have to take blood
he's
work,
doing at
do
least
it.
2 or 3 of those a month. Like everything I love is, oh, really?
Yeah, I hear I try to prefer watching glasses.
Yeah.
and
I prefer watching it on this computer. The tablet doesn't always work.
Change them. Thanks, anyway. Maybe I'll do that.
You gotta have Fritz or someone to help you with that. You can do Skype on your tablet. You can get a Skype app. You might have it. You have to, I think you just make an account, I'm not sure, and then I think you also just, so you have your own name, and you put the number that your tablet uses, like, you know, tablet uses a cell number. Or it can be through Wi-Fi, but right, but, then you have to have the other person's contact Skype number or whatever, so you can call. It's kind of like using a phone, but it's through the internet, right? Yeah, I would find it. Does Fritz live near you? Oh, that's good. Helps you with Skype. So when is Peter playing LA? August, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's true, you never know. I know. It was warm here, but Stan and Sue came up and they said it was like in the middle, mid-80s or so down there. It was in the mid-70s here. But 80s can feel hot. Yeah. Well, they live in the hills and they live under a forest, so maybe for them, where they live wasn't so hot. But yeah. 85 for March is hot. Yeah. Well, because you get fog. Yeah, because you can get some fog and that puts it down. It's the same thing here. In San Francisco can be very chilly in the summer because of the fog.
But your area and San Francisco areas
Are very different.
very different.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very different.
Yeah, very different.
Wow.
Where we are, summers are summer. Unless we get a strange summer, like we've had a strange winter this year. And we sometimes will get some fog, but not like in the city. In the city, the fog can sit there all day long.
But here, clear out everything.
But just here and north of here, it'll be nice. Summers are usually very summery here. They can be a cool summer in that it doesn't reach 90, but it'll still be nice. It'll be warm. It won't be cold. It won't be
So
chilly.
it's not very hot. Like, in LA, from that 90 or 100.
Oh, we can get 90 or 100 at our house, and even here. Our house more so than here, because we're on just the other side of the San Rafael, city of San Rafael border, unincorporated.
On which side, right
on the same side of the streetway as this, north,
Oh.
let me see. When you get on the highway in the center, go on like that, and there's 1, 2, 3 exits. The third exit is us. And it's on the west side. Oh, very close. Yeah. Takes us about 12 minutes to get from our house to here.
Thanks, Peter, we have to go.
Okay, great.
That's not very.
It's his birthday, I'm not gonna
What's
say
that?
that.
It's your birthday. Happy birthday.
That's right, man. It's the real
Wonderful.
thing.
Wonderful. Many happy returns.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so glad you shared it with us.
It's
I
tomorrow,
hope it
actually.
was a wild bash.
It was.
It looks like it, but I hope it was.
It was.
How do I come away
It
with
was
it?
a
You know,
wonderfully indeterminate bash.
Yeah,
Well, that's good.
it's just, it's, you know, it's all possibilities, you know, and you raise the bar, and then you free flow.
That's it.
You
You
free
got
fall.
it. That's it. Free fall.
Thanks.
Yeah, lovely to see you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you again.
Have
Thank
fun.
you.
Okay.
Happy birthday.
So I call those architectural tours.
Okay.
See you guys later.
Somewhere.
Did I hear you had a happy birthday?
My
Happy
birthday's
birthday.
tomorrow, yeah.
Oh, happy birthday.
You're a Gemini, though.
Yes, I am.
I'll see you.
Okay, bye-bye.
I love you.
Not in near future.
Right.
Okay.
Not right now, but a few years.
Yeah. With my brother.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Well, you know, it just keeps getting more expensive, but you can find something modest, small, a little further north. But like where Michelle lives in Sebastopol, which is, that's our daughter Michelle, up in Sebastopol, is not quite an hour away, but almost. It can be cooler than here.
You mean north?
North.
One
On 101 on the same road, but
Oh.
further north.
Oh.
And it can be cooler there, both in the winter and in the summer, but they get a little more rain, which is nice.
You got a lot more rain compared to America.
Oh, no, we haven't had enough rain this winter. I wish we'd get much more rain because we're gonna run out of water.
Being up here.
We literally say, if we don't
seem
get.
to really
I
enjoy
enjoy
it.
the whole thing.
Sharing.
We're gonna run out of
I
water.
enjoy it. I'm ambivalent about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Literally run
I
out of
suppose.
water.
There's something nice
Every time I
about.
see a house with a lawn.
I'm basically very lazy.
Oh, are you
So
insane?
there's nothing nice, something nice about sitting quietly in the background.
Climate
But on the other
is
hand,
wet climate.
by doing what I do, I am able to participate in this, which I like. So it's
It seems to me that process of
It's
offering,
rain, right, it's
even
rain. Well, it's very
offering
green
whatever
right
I
now,
have
but
to
if you
offer
come
other
in like in
people
August or
carries me along.
September, it's
sure,
all.
it's fun. It's satisfying.
And the sense that I get,
Right.
you know, I sit with Jeff a lot.
So,
out east.
the other thing is green
And
up
that
the
sense is
trees.
just that we're
But,
kind of carrying each
you know,
other along.
We've only had one
It's
fire.
really- it's a lovely way to be with other people.
It is because it's genuine. You know, it's not just being superficial. You're really playing with pushing it to the more being with the cutting edge and being with
You get a taste for
In a
this,
dry
and this
climate, I mean, all
this
the
is what your
stuff
palate wants, not
The
the
Central
more
Valley
common,
even more
you
so.
can find it everywhere. kind of
We don't
flavors.
get enough
Yeah,
rain
it's
to
much
have gardens like you have in the East Coast, where it's very tropical, wet, I should say wet.
And us like, you know, just keep coming.
Yes,
And
it
there's
is.
so many different flavors. It's like I
Oh,
love
yeah.
your like sort of open, gentle invitation to, you know, find what resonates for you. And if this does, great, we're here. And
Right.
if not, then there's
We're the
plenty
opposite.
of
This year
other
we got hardly any rain.
pointers.
I mean, the real powerful fact is that your experience
The climate
is
changing.
is opportunity, it's
It's
possibility.
very warm.
There's always more. Wherever you think you are, there's
Thinking,
more.
well, what is it, summer
And
gonna
so
be
that's
wet
just
and
an
cold?
invitation to hey, take advantage of that if you like.
It's backwards.
So you can really just follow that up as much as you want and take advantage of it.
And the
If
government
you're
will,
on to do.
It seems like there's always more, as long as your mind isn't saying, oh, and it needs to look like
That
this.
everybody has to.
Yeah.
As long as you're open enough
But
to.
even when you're saying that, there's more. The moreness is a fact, an objective fact. It's not a stance or an aspiration. There actually is more. Whether or not you acknowledge it or take advantage of it, that's fine, and you don't have to. But the fact that there is more is interesting. Even if you don't want to go there, it's not like you have to go there. But just knowing that there is more is itself very interesting.
Well, Katie always
Oh,
said
they
that
find
the only rule of her thing is, the only rule of the process she offers is,
Well,
when you think it can't get any better, it does.
They're asking residential.
I kind of like that
people to
open-ended. It
cut
reminds
back
me,
on using
where
water,
you say
but the
you
big
look at this,
companies
it
are the
just
ones that are
goes to
using all the
infinity.
water.
Yeah.
It's a
And they're
parallel to
taking it
that.
away from the
Yeah, you
farmers.
never get to
who
a
can't
dead end.
live without food, so.
And
But we don't
anywhere,
need these big
period,
lawns that have these
absolutely
big
comprehensive,
corporations
is just a doorway to more.
buildings,
How can
you
there
know, on
be
their
a problem
properties.
when nothing's ever resolved?
Exactly.
And how can there be any place to land that's where you need to be if nothing's ever resolved?
Exactly.
Like, there's no problem and then there's no opposite. There's no safety.
Exactly.
It's unresolvable.
This
Yeah.
hole was always
Yeah.
bigger.
Exactly.
And
It
this
seemed
one
to me
started
what you were
getting
talking
bigger, so I
about
thought,
with
well,
the pain
maybe I'll
thing
match it to this
and
one.
your
So I got
description
this
of how to
little
deal
thing.
with, that physical stuff is
It
the
was already,
exact
mine
same
was,
invitation
oh,
you're
time I was
giving
little, it was
for
already big.
looking at other areas of
It is
I got
the
perception.
my ears
same.
pierced.
It
when
is
I
the
was
same.
Look a little like just
Nothing is
play
any,
with it a little.
nothing is any
And-
particular way.
Yeah.
However, anything seems to be, it's actually more than that. And it's more than that. And it's
I
more
know,
than
I
that.
know.
And it's more than that
And
forever.
Leif said they
And
wanna
so
go to
you can
Cuba.
you can use that
I
fact.
said, okay, I'll be your
And
translator.
that's the objective condition. It actually is that, whether you
If
acknowledge it or not,
something
whether you
doesn't
play with it
work
or not, it
out,
actually happens to be that. That just happens to be the case. And since that is the case, if you want, you can take advantage of it. And in fact, you're always taking advantage of it, whether you notice it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, because of the very slippery nature of experience. You're always going into newness.
You can't not.
You can't not. You can't stop the
Yeah.
flow of time. You can't stop, evolution. You
It
can't
does.
stop.
Sometimes it's like, stop.
Yeah, no, it ain't gonna happen.
Covers it.
I went
No,
home.
there ain't no brakes, there ain't no off switch.
Yeah.
It's like China, it's not the same place that it was when you grew up.
I don't know, like that
I mean, you can go
unresolvability
and
just
see the
leaves you
same
no place to hold on
mountains
to.
and the
No,
same
it's
area.
a very, very powerful fact.
But it's a different
And
country.
it's an objective fact. It's very obvious, it's undeniable, and the only way to have that not be the case is pretend it is, which doesn't actually negate it. It's an unsuccessful pretense, but that's the best you can do, because it's actually the objective case. Everything is like that. Nothing is anything in particular, which is very powerful and very interesting.
It seems like the knee-jerk reaction of personality, though, of like quote normal existence, is if there's pain or if there's an emotional issue or a relational issue, it's contraction and just
Right.
like it just goes right into that, and it seems like there's nothing else, and you're like this.
Sure.
And
But you see, the defined personality, the defined persona operates on the erroneous presumption that certainty is an advantage. It's an advantage to know what things are. It's an advantage to know where you are. It's an advantage to know what's happening. And any uncertainty is undesirable.
It's like a biosphere, you know?
And the actual condition is completely the opposite.
But if they open up to tourism.
Definability, that kind of certainty and definability is our only problem and our only limitation. And in fact, the cause of all suffering.
it's funny, medicine is based on that. Medicine is based on getting the right diagnosis.
Of course.
It's based on the more certainty you can have, then the better off you are. Which is like, that's the opposite of what you're
Essentially,
looking
yeah.
to.
Sure. Essentially.
And yet, when you had a physical issue, you went with medicine and
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And
did
yet,
what they did.
what happens in any particular situation, even if it's being held as a logic tree of certainty, in actual fact, is a slipstream of uncertainty, because no one knows what's actually happening, and no one knows what they're actually doing, and no one knows what actually happens as a result of that. So sometimes medicine heals and sometimes it doesn't. And when it heals, they don't really know why. And when it doesn't, they don't really know why. So all of the logic being applied to it is just a kind of an overlay that doesn't necessarily work and doesn't necessarily not work.
It's medicine is kind of like science in that way. You know, they're looking for resolvability and not finding it. Medicine's the same thing. I don't know how doctors even manage to be doctors.
They were in the same mindset.
You know, there's and the
And to them, they
expansion
stayed friends.
in our
in
world,
spite
even
of
the
being
expansion, the
another
amount of
country away.
information. Like doctors have had to specialize and specialize and specialize because there's so
So
much.
they made friends.
And the internet has expanded, you know, thousands of fold what you have on at your fingertips to investigate anything, to look at anything. Like this world is just, it's expanding. It reminds me of what they just say is the Big Bang, and that entropy or entity, whichever one it is, it's like just like infinite chaos.
Yeah.
That's what we'll see.
Essentially, it's infinite chaos, but it's not actual chaos because it's also infinite patterning.
No.
Patterning is
Patterning is so strange because patterning is coherent information.
Isn't it great? Well,
seemingly coherent.
Yes,
You look a little closer and it's not.
Right, but you look at but the incoherence that you find presents with an infinite degree of coherence. It's not actually the coherence and incoherence turn out not to be opposites. They turn out to be a yin yang of the omnipresent condition. Look at it this way: every situation has an infinite degree of specificity. In other words, the details are actually there and they're actually very precisely detailed. And if you look closer, you find even more detail. But all of the detail is unintelligible. So it's a paradox. In normal logic, we think of those two things as opposite. Detail equals resolvability, and unresolvability equals lack of detail, fuzziness. But fuzziness is actually made of detail. But it's a detail that's it's a detail that's never ending. It's like an irrational number or something. Pi is precise value, but it's a precise value because it's indeterminate. It goes on forever. But it's precise. Yeah, exactly so. And everything is like that. Yeah.
That's what took me out of freshman calculus.
Yeah, calculus.
Delta and epsilon took me down.
Calculus was like that. I looked at the theory of limits and I said, you guys are fucking nuts. It's not like that.
I was like,
the function never gets to the limit. So why treat the limit as if it's a powerful fact? And it's all. I mean, that's basically, in a nutshell, that's what we're talking about here. Setting up a limit of a function approximates what it could be, but never actually is. And all definability is like that. Anything that's defined is like a limit of what it is. So it's an approximation. It's almost that, but it isn't that. And the degree to which it's not that is absolute. So it's absolutely other, but it's almost that. And then you look closer and you find a new approximation, and it's almost that, but it's not, and it's absolutely other. And so there's always an infinite degree of absolute otherness because the nature of the actual function never reaches a fixed value. So it's always going elsewhere. So all these approximations, no matter how accurate they are, a miss is by just a hair, but that miss is absolute, and then the function departs unknown, and leaves behind the shadow of, it was almost that. This is almost the material world. We're almost human beings. It's almost this, it's almost that, but all these almost, what it actually is, departs from that other. And it is almost this, but there's approximations, it's like a misses as years a mile is what it is. We come up, all of our knowing of what things are is artful approximation. And they're really good, many of them, but they're still all completely wrong. What it really is not that. And which turns out to be a really good news, turns out to be a powerful fact. Because
scary as hell until you realize you can't operate it.
Well, when you discover how it's a good thing, when you discover that it gives flexibility, it gives spontaneity, it gives the medium for unending intelligence and artfulness and engagement. No, totally.
Oh, no, you're right. April 17th.
So was yours.
Ending up with a 15-minute, 5-minute.
I know. But now everybody's awake again.
Yeah, right. That won't last long. I'll put him to sleep.
Okay, come on, everybody. Potty break is over. You got the chime? Good. Okay, get in here. Come on.
Elbow to the grindstone. Duty, apply yourself, work.
Is anybody chilly? Shall we close the door?
What?
You like it?
I'm good.
Quiz.
You took a stand-up break.
There's one question: is anything anything? And the answer is, I don't know. Maybe A plus or F. I'm not sure which.
I thought she had whiskers.
These Indians,
Yeah.
whiskers, nose rings. You make the call. Welcome back. So we're here for the home stretch. The finish line is in sight. The light at the end of the tunnel. The light at the end of the tunnel is looming with its promise of getting out of this room in this horribly boring situation.
Fresh air.
Fresh air. So anyway, so we've been playing with this stuff and poking at this stuff every which way from Sunday, or every which way on Sunday, and so this being our last session, any loose ends, anything that you're interested in looking at that hasn't been looked at, all that's fine, but anything like that, now speak now or forever hold your peace until you stop holding your peace. Yes.
It looks like 99% of the time I'm a drunkard walking through the street in the traffic, and maybe less than 1% of the time walking on the pavement with sunlight clarity. How is it that I can't change the numbers?
Maybe that's just the nature of things. I think that the very nature of what this is it tends to be intoxicated with itself. It tends to be, it tends to be disoriented with itself because its very basic nature is disorientation. And I think the main thing is, I think for most of us, we're used to polarizing clarity and indeterminacy. We think that clarity is the opposite of cluelessness, but in actuality, that's a simplistic way of holding it. In actuality, this is complete chaos. This is completely confusing. This is completely absurd. This is completely, I can't think of any good words. It's too absurd to think of good words. And so the fact that you're with it as that is actually clarity. It's clear that it is confusing. I mean, how could this not be confusing? It's completely unresolvable. What could possibly be any more confusing than that? And so it's no wonder we're confused. And yet, strangely enough, because it's unresolvable, even confusion can't be found, so occasionally it looks like clarity. But it's actually the same thing. It just happens to look like that once in a while. And it's our foolishness to create the duality of those. It's our foolishness to suppose that clarity is better and clearer than this confusion. Whereas in actuality, the confusion and the clarity are one and the same thing. It's just nature to seem to predominantly be that way. And even if you look closely at it, but it seems to be that way, it isn't actually that way because it doesn't actually resolve to actually being that. Confusion can't actually be found as an actual confusion. And clarity can't be found as an actual clarity. You look closer at clarity, you'll find it's confusing as hell. And you look closely at confusion, you'll find it's perfectly clear. So it's, but because of the way the mind works, we tend to polarize. The mind tends to qualify this against that. That's okay, because it's the nature of the mind to do so. And that does that is confusing too. So. But it doesn't need to not do that. The point is not to change what it is, to make it be a certain way. The point is to see what it is, see that it is that way that it is, and that is actuality, that is reality. And so the problem isn't the way it settles. The problem is having a value system of judging this way of it of seeming to be is better or worse than that way of it seeming to be. So it's playing favorites that's the problem, not the fact that there's all these different modes that seem to assume predominance. It's like if you thought waking was better than sleep, and every time sleep came, you thought, "Oh no, this is terrible. How come I'm losing this waking state? It's so much better." But of course, that's absurd because sleep comes when it comes, and then waking comes when it comes, and that's reality. It's the nature of what this is that it should appear like that.
Okay, my last question.
I'll believe that when I see it.
Has to do with until the next time.
Right.
It has to do with when I'm trying to close my eyes and just have an awareness of what it is to experience with my eyes closed. There are times when I feel a great pressure in my head. And there are times I try to ignore it and I go on and I work through it, or I spend time focusing anyway. And when I'm done, I can sometimes have a headache. And so I've tried to tell myself to experience it with the whole that I feel, the whole field that I feel. And that maybe that would bring it out of my head, you know. And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on there, that I'm feeling this great pressure sometimes. And it's like I'm meditating, but it's you know, like they say, you're training yourself to think that, okay, your brain is in your head, your mind is in your head, therefore, and your thoughts are in your head. And I realize that they're not just in your head.
Right.
And so I'm trying to figure out how to get out of my head.
Well, you can do it very deliberately. I mean, try and meditate in your knees. Try and meditate in your stomach. Try and meditate like 4 feet above your head. Just pretend you can do it and do it. Don't worry about how to do it. Just do it. I mean, I have found a really nice meditation is in 2 feet above your head. Just go 2 feet above your head and feel what it feels like there. And don't worry about how to do that, or just do it. Just go 2 feet above your head and feel what it feels like. And I find this delightful clarity, that openness and transcendental nature there. And it's very relaxing because there's no somatic tension at all, because it has nothing to do with the body, for example. But there's a lot of ways you can play with that. Or try meditating across the room. I mean, have a picture, put a candle flame across the room, or have a picture, or pick a dot on the wall, and say, you know, my consciousness is going to meditate there. And again, don't worry about how to do it. Just do it. Just pretend you can do it and do it. And you might be surprised at how doable that is.
Because I just get the feeling when I get that type of pressure, I get the feeling, I keep saying, don't try so hard, don't try so hard. But I get the feeling I'm trying so hard, which is...
Well, it may be a habit of some way you're used to approaching things, and you're localizing it and internalizing it in your head. I don't know what. But, you know, you can counter that by sort of deliberately countering it and try doing it very extremely, rather than just slightly. Try like go whole hog and just do something, totally radically different. Or look out the window at the moon and meditate in the moon. I mean, some really far away, you know. And don't worry about, how can I do that? You know, just do it. Just pretend you can do it and see what happens. You'll be surprised. And see if that is different, or the way in which that's different. I mean, it's all an open-ended experiment. There's no right or wrong way to do things. It's all just about flailing around and seeing what you can find out. Push your own envelope. Yeah, I think I discovered that 2 feet above my head thing when I had cancer. And it really sucked. I mean, I felt like crap for months. And one day I said, you know, I wish I was 2 feet above my head. And I said, okay, just do it. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, nice. Oh, with a load off. And so for the next several months, I spent my time hanging out 2 feet above my head. It worked. It was great. So you can, even though that's a fact that you can't do it, stop you from doing it. Again, that kind of stuff is like we were talking about. That's like hypnosis, basically. But qualifying what it is or isn't is absurd. Just you take advantage of the phenomenon, and that you discover some flexibility within your experience, more flexibility than you maybe used to having. I mean, basically, the way all navigation within experience is basically by hypnosis. Like earlier when we did the whole experiment where, look at your field of vision, now look at your field of thought and look where they are and feel what they're like. All of that's I'm just hypnotic direction. I mean, it's like, you're getting sleepy, look into my eyes. You bypass all that stuff. But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy by just you sort of pretend you can do it and then you find yourself doing it. Because that's the way consciousness works. Consciousness can go into modes, and the modes, it basically manufactures the modes to go into. So it doesn't need to be able to do it to be able to do it. It's able to do it if it tells itself to do it. It does it. It churns it out. It manufactures it because it's making it all up. The actuality is so weird. There isn't any field of vision. There isn't even any experience. But there's experience. So there's hypnosis. All of a sudden there's experience. So there's a field of vision. All of a sudden there's a field of vision. All this. It's all. You can move around and orient yourself within your field of experience, essentially by hypnosis, by basically telling yourself it is so, or looking at it in a certain way, and your consciousness will effortlessly create that effect, make it so. And so you can take advantage of this and use it in these kinds of explorations. And in the process of doing so, you can learn a lot because it gets you out. The enemy, the only enemy is normalcy and dullness. The nature of mind, the nature of psychology is to sort of create a dull, stupid edifice of same old normalcy. And here I am slogging through my stupid life and it just slows down and it gets dumber and dumber, right? And so these kinds of experiments of putting yourself outside of that just by supposing you can and doing it anyway, the main value of that is not that there's any necessary value there, but at least it's taking you out of this normalcy and dullness, which is also just a hypnotic condition. It's imagined into existence by the mind. The mind is so flexible. It can self-fulfillingly create any apparent condition. It simulates it and makes it a virtual reality for the experience. So stupidity and dullness and normalcy is created hypnotically. And so it's no surprise that freedom and transcendence can be created hypnotically. How nice. Very convenient.
And it sounds like we have some control over that, whether we put our focus.
Well, but even control, I mean, you don't need to worry about control or not. Whether or not you have control, don't let whether or not you have control stop you from having control. You just do it. And don't worry about whether or not you can. The theoretical, the philosophical aspects of this is just a swamp. Is there free will or not? Don't let whether or not this free will stop you from exercising your free will. I mean, you know, it's all a matter of taking advantage of the slipperiness and the open-endedness of this. Since it is so slippery and so open-ended, then all of a sudden it's kind of a blank canvas and you can do whatever you want with it. You can take advantage of this, and that gives you a lot of freedom, a lot of opportunity to move around in it, to be with it in flexible new ways. So you don't need to talk. Or if any particular mode is at all a problem or at all uninteresting or at all anything, or even you're just in the mood to screw around, just go somewhere else radically different. You know, go to Mars. You know, go to a world where humans are all, you know, evil aliens, you know, zombie people possessed out to get you. You know, it's easy to go there. The loony bins are full of people like that. You know, all of these virtual sort of realities that we imagine ourselves into are literally that, they're imaginary. So you can use that fact to reimagine yourself any way you want, just by this kind of, you know, basically suggestion, this kind of hypnosis of just suppose you can and do it.
It appears that a serious change of external circumstances, like travel to an exotic place or even travel to not such an exotic place, just changing up the routine can do that. But you point to something that's a lot more perception oriented than just messing with the external circumstances.
Yeah, and it's not simple a matter of internal external, because there's a considerable overlap.
And if you're in a crappy spot and you go someplace, get rid of it, chances are it'll come with you anyway.
The point is there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. I don't know if that's the point, but it's a point.
Why skin a cat?
Why skin a poor cat?
Your external.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, you can lose yourself a lot in messing with the external. Maybe that next house will be better.
Well,
or
this
the
is
relationship.
this is a typical mindset. Is we're dependent on circumstances, and so therefore we have to bust our asses to try and manipulate our circumstances in order to change something. And then we got caught up in this enormous, intricate rat's maze of a game of trying to do that as best we can, and we succeed somewhat, and we fail a lot, and we're still stuck in the middle of things, struggling. And all of a sudden, this is just a radically alternative approach where, well, maybe, what if the external circumstances are irrelevant? What if you can be stuck or free regardless of the external circumstances? Then that's another thing for you to struggle with, and a new maze for you to get stuck in.
But that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New thing to play with. You know, it's like, there's options, there's alternatives, there's freedom.
Seems much less cumbersome.
Well, yeah, and it's a very interesting situation, you know. If it's discovered that your experience is everything, your experience and self-verifyingly obvious, that you have a very broad range of freedom in how you are with your experience, and it can seem to be very different depending on how you are with it, then you are enabled to take advantage of that fact. It's very simple. I mean, and those two suppositions, those two hypotheses are very contrary to normal consensus reality thinking, where this isn't all your experience. Your experience is this tiny little cog in a vast wheel, and you're screwed, because all the gears have to line up a certain way in order for your little gear to sort of have anything going on with it, right? Which is it's a worldview of just embeddedness and stuckness and dependency. Whereas, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm the dreamer and maybe all this is my dream. That's a very different implication, isn't it? It's a whole different flavor to it. Yes.
Overlap from what Dave said, if you're, it's, something that kind of like jumped out at me was that, okay, so here I am, maybe not even stuck, maybe I'm not even having thoughts that are bad thoughts, but just I recognize that, okay, I'm in a thought mode here.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll switch to visual mode.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Sure.
Now all of a sudden I'm taking in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all sort of a dream, but it's helpful then to do that.
Yeah, you can navigate. You're not stuck with, you're not passively stuck with being with it a certain way. You can kind of move around within it. And you don't really know how far you can move around. Maybe you can move really far. Maybe you can really, you know.
As long as I'm not driving or something, or maybe even, as long as I'm not driving or something. Like
Yeah.
even like if I get really stuck, I'm sitting there and I'm like in a loop that won't go away. I can even just sort of visualize myself up here on the movie.
Sure. Yeah, try it and see what happens. I mean, just try it. Just feel it. Feel what it feels like.
That was helpful.
Sure.
Because when I felt like I was up here, you feel like not in your body, so you're not paying attention to.
Yeah. Just check it out.
Or,
yeah, explore all these things and just see for yourself how viable it is. And the one thing to watch out for is just when you do something, when you do some experiment and see things from some perspective or something, don't jump to the conclusion that that is anything.
Okay.
But you're free to do it. But what it is you've done and whether you've actually done anything, who cares?
Like don't attaching.
Yes.
So in other words, if I'm up here and my legs still hurt me, it's like, oh, I'm up here, I'm floating around, but that means I'm like, I don't know, something, and then,
right.
Well, my leg just hurting, yeah, okay. Don't attach any meaning to this thing. It's just a distraction.
Yeah. The idea is not to trade one stuckness for a different stuckness. You don't want to trade a stuckness of things being a certain way to a stuckness of needing to go over your head and leave your body. That is a certain thing, that you even have done that. There's no upgrading in stucknesses. The idea is to become unstuck.
But is it, I guess my question was, but is it helpful to get undistracted?
It might be, yes, definitely so. Play with that. On the other hand, distraction can be a very useful path too. You can use distraction as a technique. Distraction can be a doorway into transcendence.
How do you like looking at a pretty flower?
Sure. Or listening to very, very loud rock music. Too loud for you to even handle. It's like, wow! You know, see what happens, see where that puts you. See what, you know. It can be a doorway into, wow, where did that take me? I mean, anything, who knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, the sky's the limit. You can be experienced as a jumping off point for anything.
Right.
And it's all unpredictable and you don't know what anything is or where anything's going. But the fact you don't need to let the fact that you don't know stop you from going there and having fun with it, playing with it. It's about exploring.
Because the different types of things I've tried, like meditation or some other more strange stuff, breath work things or whatever.
Sure. It's
like they were okay for a moment and I would attach a lot of meaning to them.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they lost their.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. As soon as you attach into it, it just becomes another thing you're stuck in.
Yeah.
Or stuck with. Even if it's something wonderful and amazing, as soon as you turn it into something, it's just another, you know, stone in your road you have to step over. So just leave it as a jumping off point, and then anything that seems to be something, jump off it. Jump off to something else. And if that turns into something, jump off of that. Just keep jumping. It's not about landing, it's about jumping. Yeah, wherever you are, if you're anywhere, jump to nowhere. And if nowhere turns out to be anywhere, jump to nowhere.
That's what I learned this weekend.
I learned to jump. Anything that seems to be anything, think of it as a diving board. and just dive off it, and you don't know where you're going or where you're going to end up. And if you seem to end up anywhere, then that means that's just another diving board. Jump off it.
Well, definition is a form of stuckness because
Exactly.
it's limiting the experience to a definition. And
Precisely.
now you're stuck with that definition instead of the experience.
Precisely.
itself, which is fluid.
Precisely. We mark question marks. We don't want exclamation points.
Well,
I don't know about that.
I like the experience. I just don't know what the hell they are.
Well, you're a girl.
What?
What?
We'll have to discuss that later. I mean,
Take it up with a Freudian, and you'll figure it out.
I don't want to think about it. I just want to do it. Oh, don't go there. Man.
So, seeing all this as substance, as presence,
Mhm.
as opposed to what you were talking about earlier, the subject-object relationship that we have in our daily life,
Mhm.
is still a concept, a thought that I'm
Yeah.
getting attached to.
Yes.
I should jump from that.
Yes. I mean, anything that seems to be something is an opportunity to jump off of it. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Bravo.
Not about the landing. It's all about the jumping. Yes.
You'll go. Oh, sorry.
Wrong context. Even if you approach this very logically and rationally, you get to the same place. Because if you look very closely at what you think you know, you look very analytically, very precisely, very carefully at what you think you know, you can really map it out. Well, I know that, the world is made of matter. I know that I am a genetic, creature of, whatever, you can just do a whole map of the worldview based on what you know. And when you get right down to the elements that's constructed of, you eventually end up with unknowns. Well, everything is matter, and matter is made of subatomic particles, and subatomic particles are made of smaller particles, and the smaller particles are we don't know. So no matter how elaborate a structure you have, the ultimate elements that it's made of are unknown. They're question marks. And you cannot derive a known from an unknown. If everything we know is based on uncertainty, the entire edifice is uncertain. You can't build certainty. You can't derive certainty from uncertainty. You can't derive a known from an unknown. And all the basic, so, okay, here we are, and everything is this enormous complex system, and it all comes from the Big Bang. What's the Big Bang come from? What's the Big Bang made of? It's like, well, we don't know. So all of the known comes from an unknown, which makes all of the known ultimately the unknown, because that's what it's made of. That's what it comes from. That's what it consists of. That's what's doing it. And you can't get, oh, I know just what this is. It comes from and it's made of, I don't know what that is. that just doesn't hold water. That's completely illogic. That doesn't stand up. It's inconsistent. So even logically, certainty undermines itself. Because when you look very closely at the elements that any argument of certainty or description of certainty is made of, it includes elements that are not known, because you don't know everything. You can't know everything. You know, and one, you introduce one unknown into a logical chain, and it undermines all those knowns, because the value of that unknown changes everything. I mean, I don't know if that's very relevant, but you know, a person like myself who has a strong rational mind for some perverse reason, you know, argument and logic, I can see it, I can follow it. And all of our rational logic of claiming to have a handle on anything, if it includes any elements we don't have a handle on, the entire thing falls apart. You know, I'm thinking of a number, and the number is 2 more than another number, and it's and that number is half of another number, and that number is 10 times 100 number, but I don't know what the first number is. So every number along the way, all of a sudden becomes, I don't know what it is, because I don't know what my starting point is. You know, all this is just the workings of the nature of matter, and DNA is an implication of the nature of matter. But what matter is made of, we don't know. The entire thing just dissolves into bullshit, because you can't have a known derived from or made out of an actually be known. The fact that it's made out of an unknown, the unknownness of your starting point, translates to the whole system. Anyway, it's a side note.
But perhaps another way could there be another way to say what you said about the jumping board, or actually what you said all along, which would be like, just accept every second, every moment.
Yeah.
Just love it.
Sure.
And that's it.
Yeah. And just as simply, or perhaps more simply, just notice that you already are. That's what's already happening. You don't even need to do it, because you can't. Because all of this is this incredible intoxication with itself. This incredible loving itself. Experience is completely intoxicated with its own nature, and just drunk on it, and it's like, whoa. It's like complete. You know, a lot of the Egyptian creation myths and some of the early creation myths depict reality as God loving itself. God, you know, or Narcissus or something. You know, reality is looking at itself, because what's seeing this is reality, and what's being seen is reality. Reality is looking at itself, and it's completely intoxicated, completely lost. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And that's what we are every instant. It's always just, wow, look at this. And, you know, we parse it into all of this and that and all the detail, but it's still fundamentally just, yes, experience, life. Mm-hmm.
There's the beauty of it all. The
Yeah, absolutely.
awesomeness of it all.
Yeah.
Where does the ugliness? How does it jive? How is it perfection? The killing and
Ugly is a flavor of beauty. Ugly is a flavor of perfection. It's a spice. It's an astounding flavor.
I don't get that though.
How what? Light is good. Does that make darkness bad? Harmony is good. Does that make chaos bad? Consonance, things working smoothly is good. Does that make when things fall apart and you have a train wreck bad? That they're all instances of the functioning of the same energy. When a sun explodes and destroys its solar system, that's a working of the same forces that create the solar system. It's all the same system doing what it does. And it has a very, very broad range of apparent effects of it doing that, of what it does. And some aspects of that range may be characterized by certain life forms like ourselves as beautiful, and some others may be classified by life forms like ourselves as ugly. There may be some other life form that thinks it's beautiful. Scavengers may think war is weak. Rats or vultures or something may really look at war as beauty. Why do they have these horrible drought times of peace? It's a torment. It's a travesty on the divine sacredness of life to not have all this wonderful death to feed off of. I mean, who knows? It's all a matter of partial perspective, and a lot of our aesthetic system is biased by the biological systems we happen to be. Right? If we were a different system, we might have a very different system and so on. Do you think a photon would be bothered by war? The darkness. Who knows? I mean, it's just bullshitting. But the point is that value systems are all relative, and relative to what? To be relative to something meaningfully, you have to have a fixed start. It is something, and again, you can't really actually find anything like that. So, when it seems to be like that, you're unconsciously holding that things are a certain way. And when you discover that you can't actually find the way things are, then all of a sudden value systems are up for grabs, and they're more or less arbitrary. I mean, you can see that if you look at the value systems or the moral systems of different extreme religious mindsets, for example. I mean, one sect that holds something to be sacred, and the other sect holds the same thing to be an ultimate sin or something, or whatever. I don't know what. It's basically arbitrary. It depends on what your givens are. If you hold the standards are a certain thing, then the implications are X, Y, Z. But if you hold different standards, then you have different implications. And as we've been exploring this weekend, when you try and find a certainty if something is a certain way to use as a reference, you find it. I mean, suppose you were in a coma and all you ever experienced were dreams. How long is a yard in a dream? Well, it depends how long you dream the yardstick is. Right? How long are you going to dream the yardstick? Maybe you're going to dream the yardstick is this long. Maybe you're going to dream it's a mile long. Right? If there's no fixed yardstick, then how long is a yard all of a sudden? In dreams, all sorts of things. In dreams, all sorts of horrible things can happen. And to the dreaming consciousness, they're hunky-dory. Even if the character in the dream doesn't like it, the dreaming consciousness must like it, or why did it dream it? You can dream, you can have nightmares, and you can have these dreams, very grotesque dreams or strange dreams. And obviously, to the dreaming consciousness, that's in some sense a good thing. Or else, why would it have dreamed that? Right? Who knows? You can't say. It's all up for grabs.
I was just thinking yesterday, I had this flash on how we've all probably seen film strips or whatever of like all these people shouting for Hitler. you know,
Sure.
got like thousands of people in there. They adored him, you know, and yet
He's a rock
most
star.
people in our culture would like say he was an evil man and whatever. And like,
Just because he lost.
yeah. Well,
If he won, maybe Roosevelt would be Hitler.
well, and probably to the Germans, Roosevelt was Hitler.
Yeah, who knows, huh?
I mean, you know, and so it's like, I don't know, I just never really, I mean, I brought up Jewish, so I never like thought about like people loved Hitler. It's a total amoral perspective.
Yeah. Well, you get that morals turn out to be kind of arbitrary.
Right.
It depends on your frame of reference, and frames of reference turn out to be kind of arbitrary.
I'm used to like, you know, always making, you know, when I was young, especially making pronouncements, having really specific points of view about things,
sure.
and now it's like I really have a hard time. I mean, I still can't do that.
Sure.
I've got like a jury summons, you know, and I know that I'm gonna like take some point of view that will get me knocked off of the jury. If
Oh,
I
yeah.
can, you know?
Always do.
But it's like
So where do you go?
it's harder and harder to do that. You know, I think everybody who's like, you know, like run a red light should be hung. You know,
I think humans get bored when it's too good. We,
Agree.
and we start noticing that it's cool, and we just have to get more exaggerated experiences. And then one of the exaggerations is violence.
Sure. I mean, look at what people like.
Yeah.
People enjoy, you know, people would rather go to see a movie where there's all sorts of violence and gunshots and explosions and jets flying than a movie of people just hanging out on the sidewalk talking about bullshit passing the afternoon. Who would pay money to go see a movie like that? You know, unless you're a French existentialist or something. You know, but you want to see Bruce Willis saving the good guys and blowing up the bad guys and all of this exaggerated stuff. Those are the blockbusters, right? But people like the extremities of experience. It's intoxicating. When, you know, there's a certain primal lustfulness about the experience and consciousness. It loves the show. It loves the juiciness. It loves the, you know, the impact of it. And across the board, and it's very amoral. It likes the bad as much. It likes pain as much as it likes pleasure. You know. And of course, our conscious personas, we find that very hard to identify with typically, you know, because we're kind of taking sides. But the experience in consciousness is an amoral junkie. It just wants more juiciness, you know. And I, you know, to me, this is very palpable. You know, to me, it's really obvious. You ever notice that? Sometimes you'll be walking down the street and you smell a really bad smell, you know, some dark shit on the street. But if you ever notice, you'll find. You take another sniff, right? Right?
Really?
See, you know what I mean? Because the primal experience in consciousness likes it. It doesn't care that it's bad. Bad is good because it's strong. It's radiance. It's like, wow, it's life force. You know, and this is what we are. You know, we are this primal, you know, bizarre energy.
We think that we want some kind of ecological, egalitarian paradise. I don't think we want to do that.
If we wanted it, we'd have it. This is what we want.
That's so funny. This is what we want.
It's insanity. You look at the government we have and you think, why do we have this government? Because that's what people want.
That's what people want.
Life is bizarre. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap things up here because I feel like it's been a really good weekend. I'm very satisfied with a lot of the stuff we've gone into, and I hope you found it interesting or provocative or amusing or anything whatsoever. And it's been lovely hanging out with you all, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself. And have a redemption. Get out of here.
Thank you.